Yo, they built a vault, call it BSR. Bitcoin reserve, but it's built on a scar. Silk Road fell, 44 free K, BTC snatch. Ooh, Brith got life, while the feds got the stash. Venus Act passed, Senate's on the move. Digital tyranny, they got something to prove. Yeah. Hail to the thief, they stole our dreams. Bitcoin reserve built on our screens. I was Zano, confidential layers the key. BTC, ETH, BC's private, now we free. Trump's in the game, 69K more. Zhong's 50K, Bitfinex 94. Civil asset theft, they stack their hoards. Sacks in a lair, PayPal's old sword. Stable coins track us, Tether's a spy. But Zano's got us, confidential we fly. Yeah. Hail to the thief, they stole our dreams. Bitcoin reserve built on our screens. I was Zano, confidential layers the key. BTC, E, BC's private, now we free. They watch every move, dollars a snitch. Tether, USDC, they making me twitch. Civil theft, they seize what's mine. But Zano's my shield, confidential's divine. Hail to the thief, they stole our dreams. Bitcoin reserve built on our screens. I was Zano, confidential layers the key. BTC, E, BC's private, now we're free. Hail to the thief, but we'll rise again. Crypto's our fight, we'll break the chain. Freedom's the goal, we'll make it true. Zano, confidential, we'll see it through.
Girl, you know it's hard to understand how they change Bitcoin from what we planned. Satoshi's vision fading away. Now Roger Ver's gotta pay, oh baby. They claim he owes when he paid what they asked for, yeah. Now they broke attorney privilege at his door. Although they try to take control, Bitcoin Cash keeps Satoshi's gold, and they can't stop the truth we know. Baby, big blocks were the way to go. The way to go. When going on years is what they say. Following rules along the way. But money needs to flow free. That's what Roger helped us see. Oh baby, oh baby. Why? Tell me why did they have to change the code? When? Oh, when? Will they let our people go? How? Tell me how. Can they sleep at night knowing what they did wasn't right? Although they try to take control, revere, fighting for our freedom. Don't let them take, don't let them take what was meant to be for you and me. Do, 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 do. Although they try to take control, Bitcoin Cash keeps Satoshi's gold, keeps the dream and they can't stop the truth we know, can't stop the truth now. Baby, big blocks were the way to go, were the way to go.
So I got to stand up because I'm just so excited about Bitcoin. I can't talk about it while sitting down. So anybody here that's sick of the government inflating the money supply to pay to kill people all around the world, stop using their money. Use Bitcoin. The answer is here. We can put a stop to all of that. You don't have to support them in any way. Start using Bitcoin. There are so many websites that accept Bitcoin now. More and more are coming online every day. If you have business, you need to start accepting Bitcoin. What Bitcoin allows every single person in this room and on the planet who has access to the internet, you can have your own private bank account, right? It's called a Bitcoin account, and it's impossible for the government to seize your account. It's mathematically impossible for anyone to block you from sending or receiving money with anyone else anywhere in the world. And if you're careful about how you use it, it can be done anonymously as well. This totally strips government's control over the money supply away. There's nothing they can do about it. There's no way they can stop it. The only way they could stop it would be to shut down the entire internet in the entire world. And that's not going to happen. This is what every libertarian's absolute dream come true. It's here, and it's called Bitcoin, and we need to spread the word to everybody about it. And I'm glad you guys are here, and we're here to answer your questions about it. And when you're done learning about it here today, tell your friends, tell your family, help them set up Bitcoin wallets, tell everybody that you know about Bitcoin. Anytime you need to buy something, ask the merchant if they'll allow you to pay in Bitcoin. And anytime you receive US dollars, convert them to Bitcoins, then use them as Bitcoins. We need to spread this, and the world is going to be a much, much, much better place because of it. And it's not a question of if this is going to happen. It's just a question of how soon it's going to happen. And with your help, we can make it happen sooner rather than later.
But at the end of the day, I think there'll be know your customer this, there'll be anti-money laundering that, there'll be some tax regulations, there'll be some back and forth over what you can do, there'll be concerns about privacy. That's why I look at Bitcoin and I think, it's pretty clear. If the use case is store of value, well, like 7.8 billion people on Earth need a store of value, and probably the value of that is 100 to 300 trillion dollars, right? That's enough. That's good. If the use case is currency, replace the dollar and the euro, that seems like that's just intentionally inflammatory. We don't need to replace the euro and the dollar. The bankers are going to be upset about replacing the euro and the dollar. I don't think it's going to happen, and not in the next decade or 2 decades, so we don't need to get wrapped around the axle on that. And if the use case is medium of exchange and payment, like we don't really need to pay for a pizza with it. We don't need to pay for a Starbucks coffee with it. I mean, that's already solved by Alibaba and PayPal and Square and Apple Pay and Amazon and Google Pay, and it's, they can be regulated, and Visa and MasterCard. So you can leave Visa and MasterCard alone. You can leave the dollar and the euro alone. We can agree to pay taxes. We can, we cannot.
Well, welcome back to the Aaron Day Show. This is season 2, episode 9. And boy, isn't Michael Saylor a cuck. That video just shows that is the whole hijacking Bitcoin argument in one, basically 3-minute and 12-second video that shows everything that's happened to it. Roger's talk from 2012 at Liberty Forum, where he explained what Bitcoin was and how it was intended to be, and then what Michael Saylor is saying now. And that just shows you a night and day contrast. And so I guess we could call that the end of the podcast, but nevertheless, there's more detail to go into. And welcome back tonight. Again, it's actually been quite a stretch doing these every day. So this is going to be fun as we get, into days and more weeks into this, quite a bit to put the content together. Tonight, we're going to be talking about two different things. We're going to talk about kind of part one of hijacking Bitcoin, and then we're going to talk about top 10 nutrition lies. So if you're just following along, this is day 3 of 7, at least 7. I'm actually going to go beyond 7 days for this fast, but at least 7 days where I'm teaching people about fasting and using the fast as a way to draw attention to Roger Vere's situation. So just as the general update, Roger's facing 109 years in prison, still awaiting extradition, which could happen literally any minute now. He has been trapped in Spain now for 339 days. And this is day 3 of the fast. And I want to say last night was great. Well, we'll get to that in a second. But as a disclaimer, this fast is my personal effort. This isn't an official part of the Free Roger Now campaign. This isn't coordinated or directed or in any way involving Roger directly. I am doing this of my own initiative. So for today, what we're going to do is recap briefly what happened yesterday and then go through first kind of the fasting update, because day 3 is actually a critical milestone if you're doing prolonged fasting. So I'll walk through what all that's about and also describe today's fasting experience. And then we'll talk about today's Roger focused topic, which is hijacking Bitcoin, and then talk about action steps and a group chat, which I encourage you, if you want to participate in the group chat. Last night was absolutely incredible. We had Sal the Agorist. We had IM4IM, we had Dan O'Neill, and I mean, it actually went until almost midnight. It was just me and Sal at the end, but just a phenomenal conversation. In fact, I haven't even had time to put together the clips yet. Usually when I do one of these podcasts, I make clips and then I schedule them to go out on various social media sites, scheduled over, a month or two, because there are so many clips, and so many of the best clips. I use AI to help kind of sort through it all. And so many of the best clips were actually the discussion and the group chat and the Q&A. So this is where, none of it's, pre-planned. It's just people having an honest conversation. And that's where some of the best stuff comes out. So if you want to participate in that, you're welcome to. And, I'll send out the StreamYard link at the end of the podcast. I want to reiterate that the whole purpose of this, what I've been doing with Daylight, even how I got into, trying to defend CBDCs and everything else, is actually more around trying to help people take back their own agency. We spend so much time now focusing on white knights. Is it going to be Trump? Is it going to be Musk? Is it going to be, RFK Jr. that's going to solve all of our problems? And of course, the answer to all that is it's going to be none of them. It's up to us. We make 30,000 decisions each day, and we have the ability to control our own thoughts, our own emotions, and actions. And I'm going to spend a lot of time as we're doing these daily, kind of showing you what I've learned over the last, more than 6 years, but really kind of hardcore in the last 6 years on how to do that. Because fixing the money is not in and of itself enough to change the world. People have to change themselves. And the thing is, we're all programmed. We've been programmed by all of these outside institutions. And so it's time to take that control back. And I actually think fasting is one of the best ways to do that. I mean, talk about an opportunity to not only take control of your own health, but when you are in a fasted state, you are also incredibly present, and you are really doing a lot of internal work and figuring out kind of, because you're in this, kind of state of survival, you are dealing with thoughts and your own emotions. And a lot of, hardcore stuff comes up. So it's very, very exciting process with fasting. And again, I'm about solutions, not about participating in politics. This is why I'm big in telling people, ditch the dollar. Don't just ditch the dollar. Use privacy coins. Use alternative forms of currency. Don't complain about public health. Take control of your own health. Start fasting. Start figuring out how all of this works, because as I will show tonight, we've been lied to. Yesterday's, I'm used to doing this weekly, or not even weekly, but yesterday's episode was a great episode. I mean, the clips from that, we talked about Roger's impact on the world, not only from the standpoint of being a pioneer in crypto, but he's an investor in biotech, all kinds of other organizations. But he's also a huge champion of liberty, supporting multiple causes and people. He's a humanitarian. And so there are a lot of clips from yesterday that are testimonials from people that have been impacted by Roger. And I think it's important to get that story out there, because a lot of people in crypto have a bad name because, frankly, the space seems to attract a lot of scammy people, and Roger is not. Roger is a thoroughly principled person who has been dedicated to spreading economic freedom and peace around the world, and people are just not familiar with all of the great things that he's done, in part because he's done it privately. So now is a great opportunity for us to take some of these videos and share these stories about Roger as he's facing this Biden era crypto lawfare that threatens, basically to put his entire life, at risk in prison. So again, just as a reminder, I'll be speaking at Liberty Forum later this month, so April the 25th. That should be an interesting one. The panel's about what happened to crypto adoption, which, again, relative to Roger, a lot of these people, including Bruce and myself, learned about Bitcoin from Roger, from that speech that I showed at the very beginning, and I'll play again here during the podcast. And so we've gone from people talking about using this alternative currency to stop central bank tyranny and to spread economic liberty to now, a lot of these talks at Liberty Forum are about the Bitcoin strategic reserve and advocating for it at the national level and at the state level. We've lost our way, and so hopefully I can provide some interesting perspective, as will Joel, who's an OG on this. But hopefully there are a lot of people new to Bitcoin and new to cryptocurrency that don't even know, which we'll talk about tonight, that it was intended to be used as a currency. And so we have to bring that back, and we need to bring back the Roger 2012 energy. I'll be at ETH May the 9th through the 11th speaking, and I'll have more about this next week when I talk about expanding the fast and expanding this overall program. Roger has a motion to dismiss hearing in LA. It is May the 12th at 1:30 p.m. And so I'm going to be attending that, and I recommend people attend. It does help to show public support and to show the government that we're not going to just let this issue die or forget about Roger. We're going to continue to amplify this information until we actually get justice and until Roger is free. But I do recommend, if you're going to go, get refundable tickets, because these things have a tendency to change. This hearing's already changed twice, and also, with luck and hopefully the right focus from the administration, maybe Roger's case will be dropped and the hearing will never even have to take place. I want to mention this. So PorcFest is huge. So we're going to bring back peer-to-peer digital cash at PorcFest, which is where a lot of people learned about Bitcoin and actually used Bitcoin. People spend 7 days, an entire week, in Lancaster, New Hampshire at PorcFest using alternative currencies. Nobody's using fiat. Nobody's using credit cards. There's an entire area called Agora Alley. And last night, talking to Sal the Agorist, he's excited now because he's a big fan of Zeno, and he's been to PorcFest. So I think he's going to show up and even have a table and bring 3D printed, a 3D printer and maybe the ability to 3D print guns. It's going to be an incredible event, and it's an opportunity for us to reset and go back to the energy and enthusiasm of how we can use cryptocurrency and alternative currencies to spread freedom, instead of this diversion and people talking about partnering with government and banks and all of these other things. So I want to walk through today's fasting update. So today is a huge milestone. So I had this timeline for a 40-day fast in the very first episode of this series. And, on day 1, the metabolic shift begins. But what I'll talk about more detail today, by day 3, you've rebooted your entire immune system. And I'll talk about how that works, scientifically, and what's actually going on behind the scenes. But this is a really important day. It's also a very challenging day. So I have been a bit tired today. This is one of those kind of, it's a threshold day, and then tomorrow, from tomorrow on, it actually gets a little better, and then day 7 it gets even better. So these things kind of move, and then you hit a crisis, and then all of a sudden you're at a new level. So today is probably the worst day of the entire fast, whether it's a 7-day fast or a 40-day fast. Today is kind of the peak, and so I'll walk through that. But very excited to have hit this threshold. I actually started this at 7:30 3 days ago, so I'm beyond the 3-day period. And so what today is about, what day 3 is about, is autophagy awakening. And what autophagy is it's where your cells basically start cleaning up the trash and getting rid of and recycling old materials in the cell. And what happens when this happens is that you see an immediate reduction in inflammation. And having done this several times, I will tell you that you see it everywhere. I mean, I've had inflammation at various points, like carpal tunnel. I've had issues with my feet from time to time. I've had actually even sinus issues. Sinus issues completely go away as you do a long-term fast. So this is really, healing time once autophagy kicks in and you are really resetting your entire body and your entire immune system. I even think that from a strategic perspective, doing a fast with the changing of the seasons every 3 months is something that I'm going to try to work in, because I think, as the seasons change and everything else, this is a big opportunity to kind of reboot the immune system. So what's actually going on here, as I mentioned with autophagy, it's really cells eating junk. They start recycling damaged parts, which reduces inflammation. And how it works is at this point in time, we've switched away from burning glycogen. We've burned all of our glycogen stores, all of our carbohydrate stores, and now what we are using as a fuel source is fat itself. And so the adipose tissue is being broken down in the liver. That's producing ketones, and those ketones are the energy source now that's fueling everything that we're doing. And so that's the magic ingredient here. And again, a lot of misconceptions. People are, you have to have sugar to have brain function and all of this other stuff. And it's like, well, you don't have to eat sugar. Your body can actually produce these things without actually having consumed them as the raw material. And so many things about nutrition are completely false. And I'm going to touch on 5 of them here tonight. So there are 3 kind of memes that I put together. So these are important factors. And I've actually experienced all 3 of these today in terms of the need to do these things. By day 3, because you're going through this autophagy process and your body is cleansing itself of kind of bad cells, you need to kind of get that out of your system. So it's critical to actually hydrate, to flush this stuff out of your system. And so you might have brain fog. And so actually you're now starting to eliminate that brain fog, but it's absolutely imperative to have enough water. But it isn't just water itself, as I've mentioned before, and I'll have a slide every night that I do this. You absolutely have to have salt, and you absolutely have to have electrolytes. And I recommend Dr. Berg's electrolytes, because it's really heavy on potassium, which is really needed. And I didn't have enough yesterday and woke up on kind of the verge of cramps. The other thing, it's important to rest. So day 3 is not a day to be trying to push yourself in any way, shape, or form. So I didn't lift weights today. I actually didn't even go for a walk today. I just didn't have the energy. I literally spent all day just working on this presentation. I didn't even have the energy to do clips. So I was doing I'd do a section of the presentation, and then, that would be a stopping point. And then I'd have to just kind of rest for a while and then come back. Whereas normally I can just kind of power through this. And so rest is important. And meditation helps too. I actually took an 1.5 hour long meditation during the middle of the day today. And I'll talk more about meditation in future podcasts, but meditation is incredibly powerful. And I know a lot of people either aren't familiar with it or maybe have some kind of a woo-woo thing to it. And I will tell you, there's actually quite a bit of science behind it now that is understandable, and the works of Dr. Joe Dispenza and others, which I'll share with everyone. But I had a terrific meditation today, and it was an opportunity for me to kind of, reset, get rid of some of the fog, boost my energy up a little bit. So it's definitely a hack as you're going through this process, and something that helps you. And when you're doing that in this state, whatever unresolved issues that you have, are going to start to come up during this fasting process. And so this is a really good opportunity for you to get at, whatever's eating you in your subconscious, and to help you from a, personal transformation perspective. The other thing is, it's great to track your journey as you're doing the fasting. I wish I had done that. The 200 days that I fasted before, I didn't write it down. I remember a lot of it, or at least I remember, the peak of it, but it's actually good to write down some of the specifics. Like, I felt this way, or this happened to me, biologically, I was dealing with this issue, because actually once you understand this more, it is actually a very repeatable process. And since day 3 is really the worst of all the days, there are a lot of people that never push beyond day 3 because they just make the assumption that, oh, okay, day 3, it just seems to be getting progressively worse. So I can't even imagine what day 7 would be like, not realizing that by the time you get to day 7, you feel 10 times better than you did before you even started fasting. So it's one of those things where it's not a linear progression. So these are some of the typical questions that people have, or issues, challenges that people are dealing with. You do have reduced hunger, and so that's actually a normal part of day 3. But you have to make sure that you do focus on remaining hydrated so that you don't get headaches, you don't get cramps, and that you're actually flushing the toxins out of your body. You will get detox symptoms, and I did have a little bit of a headache for a very short period of time. Sleep changes, yeah, I mean, that was true for me. I mean, I was, again, I work on something and then it's like, all right, I got to go lay down, or I got to go meditate. That wasn't the case with the first 2 days. So this will be, hopefully, I mean, we'll see. There are other parts of the process where you have a little bit of lull in energy, but this should be the worst of the, my energy level during this process. You will get energy dips, and you will have bad breath because of ketosis, because your body is using ketones. That does produce bad breath. That is an understood function of this. So you're going to want to, rinse with water or do whatever you need to do to address that. So kind of the spotlight for today, just from the power of fasting perspective, today really is an important day because it does represent that complete immune system reboot. So this is where the damaged cells have been cleared and new ones have been generated. So this is truly a milestone in the process, but it's also the peak of autophagy. And so, because of that, that's why you have the headaches and you have a lot of these other issues, and hence the need for maybe a little bit more water than usual. So kind of my personal reflections. So just this is serving in a way as my journal. So I talk this through every day, and then I take the transcript of it, and then that's going to serve as my journal. But when I woke up this morning, first of all, I woke up during the middle of the night with what I thought were about to become cramps. So I don't know a better way to say it than that. They weren't full-on cramps, but it felt like I was about to be on the verge of having cramps, and that happened 2 or 3 times. And so I slept in a little bit this morning. I got up at 7:30. I'm usually up at 6 or 6:30. And so I definitely slept in during this process. My heart rate variability was in a normal range. I got the right amount of deep sleep. According to my 8 sleep, it was under for REM sleep, which actually didn't feel right. But nevertheless, reasonable overall sleep. But, I knew right away I had not had enough electrolytes yesterday with the cramping. So immediately jumped in and took some Dr. Berg's electrolytes, and then started at it. But as I said, today was a really kind of intermittent day of work. So it's like work on a piece of thing here, take a rest, piece of thing here, and meditate. And so kind of as I outlined, as is normally the case, my experience did fit kind of what the normal mode is. I didn't have any out of the norm experiences with this. I felt okay mentally. I mean, I didn't have as much mental energy as I might otherwise have, quite as much focus. And again, part of that is just clearing things out through autophagy. Emotionally, I felt great. I mean, I actually, and when I meditated, I had a very, very positive experience meditating. And we'll say I am very, obviously I'm dedicated to this process, but I'm also very optimistic that Roger's going to get a positive outcome. And I also think that the work that all of us are doing with this fast, and the more of us that share this, and the longer this fast goes on, I think the more impact that's going to have as well. So I did have a fairly positive day, and I'll tell you on days when I don't have a positive day, I do enjoy sharing fasting, because it's changed my life, and not just from a weight loss perspective. The weight loss part is actually probably the least significant part of it. It's everything else that comes out of it. So other than that, those are really the key features for me personally on day 3. And so the reflections that I want to have on this, again, I'm going to repeat a lot of these every day, but I've added a couple of others. Electrolytes are key. I would recommend Dr. Berg above and beyond others because of the potassium. Always do salt. I do coffee. If you can also do tea. But use salt, and if you're going to do coffee, definitely do salt. And then meditation is great, and I'll teach you more about that and different ways of doing it if you're not familiar with it. But meditation is also a game changer, and then journaling will help you along the way as well. So with that said, it doesn't seem like there are any questions. So I'm going to move off of the fasting part and move right into hijacking Bitcoin. And before I do this, I actually want to say what the purpose of this is. And so the purpose of this is not to, even relitigate the past. And I will say, I was going to put together a diagram for this, but I ran out of time. The target audience here isn't to re-engage with Bitcoin maxis. Bitcoin maxis are, in my opinion, an absolute lost cause. And when I say Bitcoin maxis, I'll actually further define it. People that have been Bitcoin maxis since before the actual chain split, before you had Bitcoin Cash and some of the others. So before 2017. So the people that were Bitcoin maxis before that, but were aware of what went on in that process, that are still Bitcoin maxis, those people are in general a lost cause, because they've essentially sold out their own philosophy and their own ideology for their gains in fiat. And so I've had countless interactions with these people, and their general mindset is they'll rationalize anything. I mean, they'll support BlackRock, they'll support civil asset forfeiture, they will support soft war and people from the military talking about how to use, Bitcoin mining as a strategic part of the defense strategy. Like, it's just, what it will take for them to admit to themselves that they've basically caved on their principles. It's really almost impossible to get someone to do that. And so it's not a good use of time. But what's important about this are actually the new people that are being introduced to Bitcoin that have never heard of this. And by the way, this is like 99.999% of the people have never heard of the block size wars. They've never heard of hijacking Bitcoin. They've never heard of the fact that people actually used to use Bitcoin to buy things and to sell things and that is most people. And I say this with some experience because I have traveled all over the country and I've done workshops on CBDCs, and the people that come to these workshops, they're not crypto people, but they're people that have woken up recently. And generally they're people that, weren't talking about or thinking about the Federal Reserve or ending the Fed 7 years ago, but because of COVID now, it's a big issue for them. And so these are people that are motivated. These are people that are interested. These are people that are engaged. And almost none of them have heard about hijacking Bitcoin, and none of them were aware that you could use Bitcoin. The general understanding is that Bitcoin is just a speculative investment, or maybe digital gold. And actually, most people have a pretty negative opinion of it that I've met with. And so even in that regard, but as I like to say, when I would survey people, more people in the outside world have heard of Sam Bankman-Fried than Satoshi Nakamoto. So I think the point here is it's not to be combative or even to pick a fight with the maxis. It's to actually think about how to start laying out some of the information in this book, because I've had other situations. I was at Chris Martens's event for Peak Prosperity, and I got more comments from my section of the talk about hijacking Bitcoin than everything else. I had people come up to me and say, wait a minute, Michael Saylor did what? He said what? You should only use Bitcoin for store of value. It shouldn't compete with the dollar. I mean, people have not been presented not only with the information in hijacking Bitcoin, they haven't actually seen all of the stuff that Michael Saylor has been saying in kind of a condensed clip out of his own mouth. And so people are really surprised by this. And I think a lot of people that have gotten into Bitcoin it's kind of FOMO, but they don't understand what it is. So they're just kind of like, FOMOing into it, but without any understanding. And so once they get the understanding, once they understand what they're FOMOing into, it does change their perception. And I will tell you, I have changed a lot of people's minds, or I wouldn't even say change their minds. I've educated them on something that they were just loosely familiar with, but may have even been invested. And it was a big shift for them, a complete shift for them. So it is important to get this information out there. And so for those watching, if you're new to Bitcoin, you need to understand that there's a Bitcoin white paper that was written by the creator, Satoshi Nakamoto, that outlined how the whole thing was supposed to work. And in the very beginning, the very title of it is a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. So there's no store of value language in here. And so the abstract says, a purely peer-to-peer version of electronic cash would allow online payments to be sent directly from one party to another without going through a financial institution. So that is everything that you need to know. So this isn't about BlackRock working with BlackRock. This isn't about big financial institutions working with each other. This isn't about a store of value. This isn't about any of these other things. It was launched right after the 2008 financial collapse, with kind of the understanding that the banking system was, fragile at best and corrupt for sure. And so what you see with Michael Saylor and everything else is just a complete perversion. So I'm going to play that clip again because I had it at the intro, but maybe everyone wasn't here. So I'm going to play this because you could just watch this clip and it'll sum up everything that you need to know about this debate.
Talk about it while sitting down. So anybody here that's sick of the government inflating the money supply to pay to kill people all around the world? Stop using their money. Use Bitcoin. The answer is here. We can put a stop to all of that. You don't have to support them in any way. Start using Bitcoin. There are so many websites that accept Bitcoin now. More and more are coming online every day. If you have business, you need to start accepting Bitcoin. What Bitcoin allows every single person in this room and on the planet who has access to the internet, you can have your own private bank account, right? It's called a Bitcoin account, and it's impossible for the government to seize your account. It's mathematically impossible for anyone to block you from sending or receiving money with anyone else anywhere in the world. And if you're careful about how you use it, it can be done anonymously as well. This totally strips government's control over the money supply away. There's nothing they can do about it. There's no way they can stop it. The only way they could stop it would be to shut down the entire internet in the entire world. And that's not going to happen. This is what every libertarian's absolute dream come true. It's here, and it's called Bitcoin, and we need to spread the word to everybody about it. And I'm glad you guys are here, and we're here to answer your questions about it. And when you're done learning about it here today, tell your friends, tell your family, help them set up Bitcoin wallets. Tell everybody that you know about Bitcoin. Anytime you need to buy something, ask the merchant if they'll allow you to pay in Bitcoin. And anytime you receive US dollars, convert them to Bitcoins, then use them as Bitcoins. We need to spread this, and the world is going to be a much, much, much better place because of it. And it's not a question of if this is going to happen. It's just a question of how soon it's going to happen. And with your help, we can make it happen sooner rather than later.
But at the end of the day, I think there'll be know your customer this, there'll be anti-money laundering that, there'll be some tax regulations, there'll be some back and forth over what you can do, there'll be concerns about privacy. That's why I look at Bitcoin and I think it's pretty clear. If the use case is store of value, well, like 7.8 billion people on Earth need a store of value, and probably the value of that is 100 to 300 trillion dollars, right? That's enough. That's good. If the use case is currency, replace the dollar and the euro, that seems like that's just intentionally inflammatory. We don't need to replace the euro and the dollar. The bankers are going to be upset about replacing the euro and the dollar. I don't think it's going to happen, and not in the next decade or 2 decades, so we don't need to get wrapped around the axle on that. And if the use case is medium of exchange and payment, like we don't really need to pay for a pizza with it. We don't need to pay for a Starbucks coffee with it. I mean, that's already solved by Alibaba and PayPal and Square and Apple Pay and Amazon and Google Pay, and it's, they can be regulated, and Visa and MasterCard. So you can leave Visa and MasterCard alone. You can leave the dollar and the euro alone. We can agree to pay taxes. We can, we cannot.
So again, that actually highlights everything you need to know about where it was, and then what the white paper says, and then what Michael Saylor is saying now. And so the challenge here is that most people have never seen Roger's version of this. Most of these new people have never read the white paper. A lot of these people don't know what a white paper is, have never heard that this document exists, let alone they haven't read it. And it's almost like you can actually see there are people that are largely like there's a class of 2017 Bitcoin. You get a new influx of people into Bitcoin when there's a bull run. So you've got the class of 2017 and you've got the class of 2021, and they almost have they do have definable features. There are specific things that they believe based on the indoctrination and the information that they were exposed to at various points in time. And so, earlier, if you're talking about the people that were involved during the original, fork wars and things that we're going to talk about, I mean, a lot of them had read the Bitcoin Standard and so forth. And now there's, and that's still a part of the ongoing false narrative and propaganda. But then now people aren't even reading that. Now people are just at the point where it's like, oh, I saw the Bitcoin conference, or I saw a politician talking about this. I saw Cynthia Loomis. And so we're further removed from people actually having any information at all. I mean, we're like way down in Plato's cave at this point with all of it. And so it's a challenge as much as anything else. So I'm going to present some of the high level information from just part one of the book. But again, to me, the challenge is more not to pick a fight with the maxis, but how do we make people aware of some of these just basic points? Here's an example from the book. This was an early meme or ad for Bitcoin. I mean, this was what it was all about at the time. This was even, I believe, on the website for Bitcoin. And it was comparing Bitcoin to Western Union. You could send up to $50 using Western Union for a $5 fee, and it was only 1 cent to do this anywhere in the world with Bitcoin. And you didn't have to go to a Western Union branch or anything like that. This is what people were excited about. This is what it was about at the beginning of Bitcoin. I guarantee you the class of 2017 people involved in Bitcoin now, or the class of 2021, have never seen this before. They've never even heard of this. This is a foreign concept to them entirely. The other thing that's really eye-opening is how much of a squandered opportunity it was. I mean, to the point that how heavily, the ramp up was with Bitcoin. By the end of 2017, these are just some of the large merchants that were taking Bitcoin directly. Overstock.com, Microsoft, Newegg, Expedia. There were some Subway sandwich franchises that were taking Bitcoin, Steam. And so people were really using this for commerce. And it was a really exciting time because, the price started to jump in 2017 because people were actually using it. And then people started buying it because they were seeing that people were using it. And then it got hobbled. It got basically neutered. And so the fees went from, in the Western Union example, 1 cent, to now the fees jumped to an average of like $28, and really even closer to $50. So you had these big merchants that were selling things for Bitcoin and the fees were $50. And if you were trying to, pay at the basic level, lowest tier for speed, it would take 7 to 14 days to complete a transaction. So of course, Bitcoin shifted from being a medium of exchange to a store of value because it didn't work. It broke. They broke it, and it wasn't intended to be this way. It wasn't designed to be hobbled like this. And I'll walk through this. But I think this is a really important slide because more than anything else, when I talk to people that are new to this whole concept, they didn't know any of this. They would be stunned to learn that these big retailers were taking Bitcoin. And so this is from the book. There's kind of a great section in there that compares the original design of Bitcoin versus the hijacked version. So what was the purpose, the core principle? The purpose of the original design was digital cash for internet payments, for online payments, right in the abstract, right at the very beginning of the white paper. What's the hijacked version? Store of value, even without functioning as money. Again, the Michael Saylor comment is the dominant view. And you even now have politicians and the Federal Reserve and everybody else coming out and saying, oh, well, maybe Bitcoin is digital gold. And by the way, that's not a win. It's not a win when politicians are saying this. It's not a win when the Federal Reserve says this. They're not conceding a loss. They're actually cheering on a psyop. That's effectively what's going on, to the point where even today, I mean, Jack Dorsey, who is no advocate for freedom, I would argue, even he came out today and said, effectively Bitcoin is useless unless it is ultimately used for payments. Now, I suspect he has his own motivation around the things that he's doing around payments, but nevertheless, for once, I actually agree with him. And this is clear in terms of what's going on with the original version versus hijack. Transaction fees, extremely low by design. Satoshi early on said in the discussion forums and in other places that Bitcoin was supposed to compete with MasterCard and Visa. It was supposed to be able to do 25,000 transactions, per second. Like even back in the day, like as it was originally designed, it wasn't, oh, we're going to build this out now, and then 20 years from now, it's going to be able to compete with Visa and MasterCard. The point was to be able to do that quickly out of the gates. Scalability, the idea was it would scale with block size increases, which, in a way that isn't even right, because the original Bitcoin had no block size limit at all. And the block size is just, how many transactions can you put into a block? So Bitcoins are mined every 10 minutes. Every 10 minutes, somebody solves a math puzzle, and then whoever wins solving that math puzzle adds a new block of transactions. And so it's a blockchain. Every 10 minutes, new transactions are added, but you can't go back and delete the other transactions. But if you limit the size of the block to, say, 1 megabyte, then that means you can only do 7 transactions per second. Well, that was never supposed to be a limit. There was no block size. And it was only put in as a temporary measure as they were kind of testing the network. And so it was never intended to be capped. It was intended to scale as the block size increases. You weren't going to get to Visa and MasterCard levels by keeping the block size small and then having the transaction fees go up to $50, because you're not going to be able to compete with MasterCard or Visa or Western Union, because you still have to compete in the marketplace. Offering a digital currency that's 50 times as expensive as Western Union is not an innovation. That's not actually what people were looking for, and that wasn't the intent. Node expectations. The original idea behind this is a node was going to be a computer or a group of computers that actually mined a block, that actually were putting computational power behind solving these math problems. And that over time, that competition was going to get fierce and fierce. And there are going to be companies investing hundreds of millions of dollars competing against one another to build data centers. And those were going to be the nodes that basically handled the transaction information regarding the blocks every 10 minutes. This hijacked version has this kind of almost like communist, okay, well, we need to make it so that anybody with a $100 or $50 Raspberry Pi can be a node. And that makes no sense. Those nodes don't really even do anything. But on top of that, it just hobbles the entire network and makes the entire system unworkable. And then there's the economic design. So the economic design for Bitcoin was this. You have these block rewards every 10 minutes when a miner solves one of these problems. When you go back to when this was launched, a miner would get 50 Bitcoin every 10 minutes for solving that, being the first to solve that math puzzle, plus whatever the transaction fees were. Well, since the network was new and no one was using it, and since it would take time to build out the network, it was very important to have these high reward amounts. But those reward amounts get cut in half every 4 years. So it goes from 50 to 25 to 12 and a half, et cetera. And so the whole point of that was, the whole point of the block reward was to be a subsidy to incentivize people to mine and to begin mining until such time as there were huge transaction fees coming from large volumes of transactions. So small transaction fees, but high volume. And that's fundamental to the entire economic system. The hijacked version claimed that this model was flawed and then changed it to this, basically it's like a cap and trade system for carbon. So we're going to artificially limit the size of the blocks, and then we're going to put in place this auction mechanism for people to be able to bid up how much they pay for transactions. Well, once again, you have to compete with gold and MasterCard and everything else. Like this idea that people are just going to continue to pay more and more per transaction doesn't work with basic economics. And it's going to turn into a real problem, probably at the next halving, because as of today, and I talked about this briefly yesterday, the Bitcoin blocks are almost empty. Nobody's doing transactions on Bitcoin. And so what that means is, unless people keep on buying speculatively, there will not be, the transaction fee today was 11 cents. Well, if you're doing 7 transactions per second and you're a miner, so 7 transactions per second times 11 cents for the transaction, that's not going to be enough for people to make money off of all of the hardware and computational power and everything that they have going into mining this. And so that is actually a fatal problem for Bitcoin that will be coming up with the next halving. So this whole debate over store of value or medium of exchange, I mean, you will have, people, you have Saifedean Ammous, who's like the guy, he's the Bitcoin standard guy. And so he's out there putting these statements out, like the real advantage of Bitcoin lies in being a reliable long-term store of value, not from its ability to offer ubiquitous or cheap transactions. Well, again, that's not in the white paper, and we really needed an alternative payment system. And now it's absolutely essential that we have an alternative payment system. Think about what's going on now with all of the debanking, with all of the financial surveillance that we already have with the existing dollar. This isn't some thing that we have to worry about in the future. The FBI is already using AI to analyze our financial transactions. The NSA is already doing bulk data collection. Just 2 or 3 weeks ago, the Treasury Department sent out a notice to financial institutions in 30 different zip codes in California and Texas and said, you have to report on any transaction larger than $200. The way the system works today is there's an automatic, you have to automatically report transactions over $10,000. This reduced that to $200, right? So the existing system is highly surveilled, it's highly programmable, and that's before we get stable coins or CBDCs. So we absolutely need the ability to have ubiquitous and cheap transactions. It's key to stopping absolute digital tyranny. Whereas, he tries to claim he's an Austrian. His book has some Austrian economics in it, but he misses the fundamental point. Murray Rothbard talks about this. Many textbooks say money has several functions: a medium of exchange, unit of account, or a measure of values, a store of value, etc. But it should be clear that all of those functions are simply corollaries of the one great function, the medium of exchange. And so somehow, again, people read these books, they read the Bitcoin Standard, they read this stuff, they see these memes, they don't think about them critically. They don't understand whether it even makes any sense. It's just, well, I read this in the book, this book is popular, this is now my belief system. And it's been effective. The Bitcoin Standard is part of how Michael Saylor switched from being a Bitcoin skeptic to whatever you want to call him now, chief grifter, borrowing other people's money to buy the coin. Bitcoin was also always supposed to have big blocks. Again, there's all kinds of documentation on this, and above and beyond all else, I encourage you to buy the book and read the book. I'm just giving you kind of the Cliff Notes version and trying to get this information out there, since Roger can't, but in the way where maybe we could start explaining the basics to people that are newly onboarded, who think that somehow if they just keep investing and they cut their own hair and dollar cost average and put all their money in, then at some point in the future they're going to be at the top of the pyramid of society, living in a citadel, and everybody else is going to be basically serfs underneath it. This is actually part of the meme and the culture of all of this, and so it's not going to work that way. I mean, it's basically been pushed to surveillance Ponzi territory, and people need to understand that we have a real big problem looming with digital tyranny. So it was always supposed to have big blocks. Again, Satoshi Nakamoto said it can be phased in like this: if block number is greater than this, then max block size equals larger limit. So again, changing the block size is something that you can do by literally just changing one variable in the code, and there was never even supposed to be a block size to begin with. Gavin Andreessen, so Satoshi Nakamoto handed over basically the keys to the GitHub for Bitcoin to a guy named Gavin Andreessen, and he was always an advocate of big blocks. So a quote from him: "The plan from the beginning was to support huge blocks. The 1 megabyte hard limit was always a temporary denial of service prevention measure." Mike Hearn, who's also was an early, I think one of the first 5 developers: "Bitcoin was built for massive scale and did not run into inherent technological limitations. Instead, the project was taken over by a small group of software developers who redesigned the whole system." And then lastly, the CEO of BitPay, which is one of, if not the largest point of sale vendor for crypto, He said, if you told me in 2011 that we would be sitting here in 2017 and we hadn't bumped up this block size, I would have said there's no way that could happen. So again, all the OGs, everybody was involved. The early core developers and everything else were just kind of befuddled by this idea that this 1 megabyte limit that was put in as a temporary denial of service measure was going to become the absolute limit, and that the whole narrative was going to shift to digital gold, and then we'll build things on other layers. It's mind-boggling. And so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. There's a lot of text here too, but the whole point of the nodes, this idea that, you know, somehow you're empowered because you're using an outdated, slow $50 Raspberry Pi, and that makes you participating in the network. I mean, it's kind of like it's the participation prize of participating in this network. It was always intended. And the quote from Satoshi Nakamoto, eventually when we have client-only implementations, the blockchain size won't matter much. Network nodes would consolidate and there would be more pooled mining and GPU farms, and users would run client only. So again, you as the end user wouldn't need to be running a node. You wouldn't have, you know, expensive equipment or whatever. This would be something that you would have people, large institutions competing over mining and basically solving these math puzzles. It was always from the design. And so one big part of it is, again, so technocracy is all about artificial scarcity. The whole idea that I talk about all the time with technocracy is to have a, you know, one world global government and one global digital currency that is backed by energy credits. And the energy credits are in essence, that's false scarcity. That's saying, well, you know, carbon is the only, you know, and we're only going to measure things by carbon. It means you're going to limit actually even the exploration for other types of, you know, it artificially limits things. But what we now know the technocrats are doing is they're going up and buying up forests, and they're front running this so that they basically can have a control over the new artificial scarcity. But the idea that BTC, that big blocks are unworkable and not decentralized, you know, again, you really have to be a Luddite and take a very pessimistic view. Satoshi even talked about how the technology in 2008 and 2009, he predicted that it would continue to grow based on Moore's law, and that's happened, and in some cases beyond. So download speeds have absolutely, bandwidth costs have absolutely plummeted. It was $10 per megabit per month in 2009. That's dropped to less than 50%, continues to drop. The average download speed was 4 megabytes per second in 2009. Now it's greater than 180. And somebody's actually working, some scientists have just hit 301 terabytes per second over existing fiber networks. And so this idea that we're supposed to keep this thing hobbled because it's unsafe because of bandwidth and these other things just doesn't match. And so it was Safi who actually made this comment. A node that can add 42 terabytes of data every year would require a very expensive computer. The network bandwidth required to process all of these transactions every day would be an enormous cost that would be clearly unworkable, complicated, and expensive for a distributed network to maintain. Absolutely 100% false based on all of the data about storage cost, bandwidth, and everything else. So again, the technocrats have come in and they've hijacked Bitcoin. I mean, there's a great quote from Hayek: "The curious test of economics is to demonstrate to men how little they really know about about what they imagine they can design." And so the central planners at Bitcoin have created, again, their own artificial economy where they've capped the block size. They've pushed the financial transactions off-chain into these second layers and things like Lightning Network. They've encouraged nodes for all, and then they've created an artificial fee market. I actually view the Bitcoin core, the people that hijacked Bitcoin, as the same in terms of ideology and how they function as the technocrats and Klaus Schwab and all of these other people that, you know, we view as being the enemy from a central bank digital currency perspective. Well, they're the same. It's the same mindset that has hijacked Bitcoin. So there are 4 eras of Bitcoin that there may even be time to add a fifth. But the first era, and that's kind of when I got involved, and that's where Roger certainly got involved in 2010. The culture was techies and libertarians, I mean, the hierarchy was you had Satoshi Nakamoto, who was this, anonymous developer. Nobody knows who he is. There was no industry development and there was no public awareness. And so now you focus to where we are right now, and we went through these various stages, which I'll talk about not today. This is actually just part one of Hijacking Bitcoin, but now where it is, I mean, this book was published in, I think, April the 12th or something last year. So much is, think about how much has changed just since this book was published. So now the culture is, well, it's price focused, but now with an emphasis on lobbyists and people pushing government officials to use a combination of taxpayer theft directly and civil asset forfeiture to drive up the price. Like it's price focused is an understatement, right? It's price focused, but now kind of moving on like to extortion. The leadership hierarchy is very much still Bitcoin core. The industry development is mainstream, I guess, to a point, although mainstream, I guess, in the sense of what in industry to do what, because Bitcoin doesn't actually do anything right now. And public awareness is definitely now mainstream. Mainstream and completely devoid from truthful information about the nature of Bitcoin. Again, because as I say, I encounter people all the time, and I will tell you, I mean, I mentioned this yesterday, this conference I was at in New York, and it was half the people are like, oh, Bitcoin is digital gold, and we're buying. Although there was actually skepticism about it, but that was their understanding of what Bitcoin is. And then on the other hand, there are people that think that XRP and Stellar are part of the quantum financial system, and there's going to be a complete debt jubilee and reset. And so my point is that overall, now the mainstream is completely uninformed, and it's almost like a combination of Q-level propaganda meets actual direct government propaganda. There's really not much truth or factual information involved at this point. I'm going to spend a little time talking about Lightning Network, but not a lot. Normally I would. I mean, a year ago, I was like trying to explain to people why it was conceptually flawed and everything and wouldn't work. I don't need to do that anymore because even people in Bitcoin concede that. People are not using Lightning Network. Lightning Network, the idea behind Lightning Network was you're not going to do transactions on the base layer. There's going to be this thing called Lightning Network where you basically move your Bitcoin, some of your Bitcoin to this Lightning Network, and then you can transact there. And none of those transactions are done on the blockchain. So this was the scaling solution that people came up with and promised people and said, whenever this was, 2015, it's been like 8 years or something. And the rumor is always it's 18 months away from being finished. And so we're 8 years in and it's still not finished. It still doesn't work. Nobody is using it. And I'll talk about a couple of reasons that it was flawed. But the thing is, the argument has actually moved away from, well, okay, Bitcoin will become a medium of exchange. At some point, we just have to fix Lightning. People now don't even talk about there being a medium of exchange component to Bitcoin. They have solidified, they have ossified, as Michael Saylor says, around this idea of it's only a store of value. So we don't even need to fight with people about Lightning Network. They concede that Bitcoin isn't going to be this. And in a weird twist of fate, some of these same people that are promoting the hijacked digital gold version support stable coins, which are digital programmable fiat. Again, we started with peer-to-peer digital cash, where you use this new money that's censorship resistant outside of third parties and banks. And now we're like, okay, well, we're going to have this hobbled technocratic thing that people invest in, and we're going to try to influence politicians to use taxpayer money. And then we're going to use for day-to-day payments surveillance fiat in the form of stable coins. Like it's 180 degrees away from the white paper. The problem with Lightning Network is based on, again, the whole point of this was, well, we have to keep the block small. Well, if you keep the block small, then, to access Lightning Network, you actually have to make a transaction on the chain to access the second layer. Well, based on the 1 megabyte block size, it would take 120 years to onboard people to the Lightning Network. And so, and furthermore, you have to generally open two channels a year. I'm not going to go into all of the details on that, but to let 7 people actually access this, if you wanted to have everybody on board and using Lightning Network, you would have to have a minimum of 133 megabyte blocks. So again, by design, there is no way Lightning Network could have ever worked as a solution for peer-to-peer cash on the second layer. The other thing is, because of the way that it works, and I won't go into a lot of it, but other than to say, let's say I wanted to send, $10 to Bob, but I'm not directly connected to Bob, so I have to go through Alice. Well, if Alice doesn't have $10, then I actually can't go through her. And so what that means is, the way this ends up getting set up is, in order for people to be able to use the Lightning Network, you need to have these big hubs that have enough liquidity, or otherwise people can't connect through other nodes to get to the party that they want to get to. Well, once you have these big nodes that are centralized, then that's a big source of potential censorship. That's a source of being banned. And then what's practically happened, because this isn't a theoretical concern, it's actually played out. You had big hubs, like Exodus Wallet served as a hub. A lot of people served as hubs. And because of anti-money laundering and know your customer laws, they shut down. They were threatened and they shut down. So now you can't. So Lightning is unusable because you need to have hubs in order for it to be useful, which defeats the purpose of having it to begin with. And people don't want to serve as hubs because it's a legal liability. So Lightning is a disaster. I think at this point, most people concede it's a disaster. So I won't spend more time on it unless it becomes a thing where people are starting to talk again about how Lightning is going to be the solution. But I will tell you, I haven't heard that lately. I've seen more rage quitting. I've seen more people kind of exiting Lightning than embracing it. So that's part one today on the hijacking of Bitcoin. Again, I thought those were good points, and it frustrates me to no end that by the way, I interviewed Roger about this. It's the third episode that I ever did of this podcast. So season 1, episode 3. And it was 3 weeks before he got arrested. So I'm sure he had big podcasts scheduled. So he'd only done a couple of, small podcasts like mine. So, maybe a few thousand people saw the interview. I do encourage you to check it out, though. I mean, he did a great job, obviously, of hitting these points, and people just have not had the opportunity to hear him talk about this at scale. And so that, not only is that unfortunate, but then what I've been trying to do, a lot of the visuals that I showed you today, I put together, and I put together some tweet threads during the Bitcoin conference last year, when all of these politicians and Cynthia Loomis and Trump and RFK, when all of these people were there talking about Bitcoin and broaching these ideas of the Bitcoin strategic reserve, I try to do my part to condense this information into memes so that people could be exposed to it. Because again, what I'm telling you is that people aren't sitting here dismissing the information in Roger's book. They haven't heard of the information. And interestingly, with all of this, with hijacking Bitcoin, this book has been around for a while. I definitely will go into the censorship and propaganda because I've experienced it myself. No one has refuted the factual claims in this book. This book has been out now for almost a year. And you will see people that say, when it came out, and I put together a tweet on it, and so a whole bunch of people got into the thread and talked about it, and most of the Bitcoin Core people actually then blocked me as a result of that tweet thread. But there were people that said, well, my friend's about to do a podcast. He's going to tear this book apart. He's going to go through all of it. It hasn't happened yet. There's no refutation to the facts in the book. So this book is very thoroughly researched with like 200 and something footnotes. And when I read it, and before I interviewed Roger, I read the book twice. I went through the footnotes, and I wanted to prepare myself. I mean, I'd gone through it. I was familiar with it already, but I will tell you, the information in this book is pristine, and I do encourage you to get a copy of it. So I'm going to switch focus now back onto the kind of the health front related to fasting, because again, the fast is a great way to draw attention to Roger's cause, and it's worked for Gandhi and Cesar Chavez and a whole bunch of other people. But one of the other reasons that I want to do it is it is truly a transformative process to go through. Like people like, oh, I'm worried about your health. Like, don't hurt your health for Roger. Believe me, I'm going to come out of this fast and I will be a healthier person. I'll be a more engaged person. And it's not even just about weight. I mean, I've rebooted my immune system already. By day 7, I start to generate more stem cells. But on top of that, you will watch, as if you keep tuning into this podcast, watch how much sharper I get in terms of just mental clarity and mental energy. You'll see the benefits firsthand. So I'm not hurting myself by doing this. What I'm actually trying to do is help Roger and help myself, and then actually help other people to help themselves improve their own health using this fasting technique, which is, something that is a threat to the medical complex. I mean, if it turns out that you can cure a whole bunch of things and fix a whole bunch of things, and there's no drug involved, there's no process, there's no procedure, you don't even have to buy food, then, there aren't a lot of people with a financial incentive for this information becoming available. So with that, when you are in a fasted state, you do start thinking about food, and you start thinking about your relationship to food, and then you start thinking about how everything works. And so what I want to share here, this isn't actually the top 10, it's the top 5. I ran out of time. I'll do the second 5 probably tomorrow or the day after. But it's not just that everything that we've been told about nutrition is false. It's that it's false, and none of the people that put forward the falsehoods or the propaganda were ever held accountable, and most of them gained either fame or reaped substantial financial rewards for it. And I bring that up as a way to kind of tee this up, because I get into arguments with people. If you've heard me enough, you've probably heard me say, public health is a depopulation death cult. I'm not saying that as like a bumper sticker comment. Having fasted for well over 200 hours, having spent hundreds of hours not only researching fasting while fasting, I ran a healthcare company related to financial incentives and weight management, everything else. I know how healthcare works from the inside out. I actually understand how that operates. I actually studied public health for a brief period of time at Harvard. I've seen how these systems work. I've seen who these people are. I remember giving a talk at a Harvard public health ethics conference, and I gave some talk about Ayn Rand, and nobody knew what I was talking about. It was like a very absurd situation, trying to talk to somebody about ethics in public health. Like, that's actually almost a joke in and of itself. So I'm not saying these things just to be flippant. I've actually spent a bunch of time, and I want to share some of this and try to get people to start thinking about this, about how profoundly programmed we've been, and how much, everything in our life. Why do we work 9 to 5? Why do we eating 3 meals a day? Like, you really start questioning everything. And when you start questioning and then you start doing research, you find that most of the world has been structured, either with malice or to benefit a certain group of people, but it has nothing to do with, this idea of, well, things are there that way for a good reason. It must have been well thought through a long time ago, and now it is what it is. It turns out, as I'll show you today, at least with nutrition, no, it was not well thought out. And it wasn't just people thought they were doing the right thing and they made a mistake. I want to stress that very clearly. Because certainly we learn things all the time. We make mistakes. That's how you learn, and that's how you grow. And as you're about to see, that is not what has happened with nutrition. This is what we thought at the time, but now we know better, and now we made a correction. That's not true. So the whole idea of eating 3 meals a day, I went through this slide yesterday. Is that necessary? Is it a modern construct? Well, spoiler, it's a complete scam that started in the 19th century. And you actually had people like Henry Ford and others that were pushing this. They were pushing this because they were moving towards having different shifts at work. And so this was all about optimizing work schedules for factory employees. There was no aspect of this that was based on human health. So I want to stress that again, that it was not based on science. What you had was, you had industrialists that then pushed the USDA, who later adopted it as guidelines, but not on the basis of science. And what you find with a lot of this is, this is certainly true with Rockefeller and obviously Bill Gates. There's a long history of this where you basically have people that want to shift the policy, and then they end up being the ones that fund the scientists, fund the research schools, and then also maneuver and get their bureaucrats in charge of these public health institutions. And so this is, so this goes back a long time. But if you've ever thought about it before, And probably you eat 3 meals a day. That is what most people do. There's no basis for that. So as you go through fasting and you start asking these questions, like, yeah, well, okay, all right, that has nothing to do. And even if you bought the argument of, well, that's what it needed to be like back in the 3-shift industrial day, that's most people did not work in that environment. So why do we still have it? Why are we still pushing this same thing? And it goes literally all the way back to this, and nobody thought to question it. So again, the industrial leaders pushed for standardized meal times. The USDA adopted the guidelines. Was anybody ever held accountable? No, most people still operate with this. Most people still believe this. And while there's been some shift in eating patterns, the 3 meals is still the thing. And yet many people actually profited from it, like General Mills and Kellogg. And now, the packaged food market is a $377 billion a year industry. Lie number 2. So, I mean, if we were doing this live, I'd do a show of hands. How many of you have heard or believe that breakfast is the most important meal of the day? I know I grew up thinking that. In fact, the part of my passion for this too is then you get pissed at yourself going through this, knowing that you bought it or were subjected to it. Like, my parents didn't know any better. I would eat sugar cereal every day. I mean, think about what they trained us to do. You should eat Fruity Pebbles. You should eat Fruit Loops. You should eat these breakfast cereals, which are, now genetically modified grains plus sugar. And that's the most important meal of the day. And that you have to eat 3 meals of the day. Expand it out further. What has the government done? The government through schools has gotten more and more into this as well. Now we need to have a Head Start program. Now we need to have kids in school earlier, before they're 7, when they can be directly programmed with no conscious filtering. And then we need to actually control their food. We need to use government money to push this unhealthy food while we're also getting them in a state where they can be conditioned and programmed. It's that infuriating. It is all gaslighting. There is no basis for the idea that breakfast is the most important meal of the day, or that it's even an important meal of the day. So then ask yourself, well, where did this come from? This is why I get upset when I hear, RFK is going to bring back gold standard science to public health. There is no gold standard science. There is no golden age. It's been bullshit the whole time. So who is responsible for breakfast, the most important meal? Well, it was the cereal companies. It was Kellogg's. It was General Mills. And again, the USDA has been a captured entity forever. I mean, from the beginning. I mean, again, there wasn't this point where it was ever serving the function people have been propagandized to believe that it did. Has anybody ever been held accountable for this? No. Again, it's not even acknowledged. If I were to ask you to raise your hand, do you think breakfast is the most important meal of the day? Or have you heard that this is still the narrative that's being pushed? Because it is being pushed. So nobody's been held accountable. Kellogg's did $15.3 billion in revenue in 2023. Global cereal market is $37.4 billion, all driven by this myth. So first we got you with 3 squares a day, and now the most important one is breakfast. And here we are. That's how this got to be that way. The next one, and I had to deal with this as well. This has negatively impacted me. And I talked about this yesterday. Low-fat diets are healthy. That was the big push. Fat is bad. And it's this skinny lie that made us fat. And I used the story yesterday when I was overweight as a kid, because, I was eating 3 square meals a day, and I was eating, breakfast cereal as the most important meal of the day. Well, you do that, guess what? You're going to be overweight. So then we go to a nutritionist. My parents take me to a nutritionist, and the nutritionist says, you have to have a low-fat diet. And here, go get these Snackwell cookies, that literally pointed me to the cookie section. So I already got fat because I'm eating the cereal that they pushed on me. And the solution to this is that I can't eat fat. I need to go eat cookies. I'm not even making this up. This was a registered nutritionist, who worked with a doctor. I mean, and this isn't a unique case. This is the standard. This is how all this works. These nutritionists actually think that they're helping people. They don't know anything about nutrition. Doctors, as I had mentioned, I think on the first day, a doctor only goes through 22 hours of nutrition studies their entire medical school career. So these people, this is why when I said, if they say go ask your doctor about fasting, your doctor's never heard about fasting. Fasting isn't even in a curriculum. So you go to your doctor's like, I don't know, sounds risky to me. They have no information about this, but what they've been doing is peddling things like, low fat diet, for which again, there's no scientific basis. And in fact, well, there is some manipulation and propaganda around it. There's this guy, Ansel Keys. Ansel Keys was involved with the American Heart Association. There's a great video. I should have put a link to it on here. I think Cato Institute actually has a video on YouTube. There are some resources on this talking about this guy, Ansel Keys. He basically manipulated the data around the link between fat and heart disease. And this is the entire basis of the low-fat narrative, the entire basis of eggs are bad, all because of one guy associated with the American Heart Association who intentionally manipulated the data. Was he held accountable? No. He was put on the front cover of Time magazine. So while they've made adjustments, kind of, like actually, I can't even say they've made adjustments. Don't follow any public health guidelines. The next diet, called the Lancet diet, suggests that you shouldn't eat red meat. It actually has added sugar in as something that you should have daily, which there is no sugar is basically a poison. And so no one ever gets punished for this. And miraculously, when they come up with new health guidelines, they're actually worse. But the new health guidelines with the Lancet diet, here's the key with these guidelines. They don't even intend or state that they're prioritizing human health. It's part of the Agenda 2030. So when they're looking at developing nutritional policies, they're looking at the impact on the globe, the impact on the environment. So they're actually recommending insect protein. They're recommending a reduction to almost zero of red meat, and they're actually putting in added sugar. And they state that they're trying, that this is like a holistic Agenda 2030 thing. They're not even stating that they're trying to optimize your health. So if you thought, which I'm sure a lot of people did in the 90s, people that saw the food pyramid in a health textbook and saw all of this stuff, you probably thought that it was based on gold standard science and that the intent of the nutritional guidelines was to improve your health. It was never the intent. That has never been the motivation, which is why when I say boycott public health, literally boycott public health. They don't even have the intention of improving your health. The probability of you finding good information there is almost zero. So yeah, the low fat market just absolutely ballooned. And so it's $91 billion by 2023. The American Heart Association got $300,000 a year for adding a healthy choice tick. This is the other thing. You can't trust any of the things that you see, and you definitely can't trust government food labeling either. They'll come up with a different way to say genetically modified. It's now bio something. They just changed the language because the language is being written by the ConAgra and Archer Daniels Midland. So the people that are actually, the government shouldn't be involved in food labeling at all. We have a whole debate right now where you have like this whole RFK regime is, well, we need informed consent, and informed consent comes from getting good information through government. There's no reason to think we're going to get good information through government. We need a consumer choice. I mean, we need a free market solution for this. But it turns out you have impediments for even trying to provide this kind of information as a private entity, because then it's not following USDA guidelines. So they actually prohibit and prevent and make it difficult for free market solutions for this, while absolutely putting forward propaganda and labeling that is unuseful. The last one that I have for today is that carbs are the base of a healthy diet. I'm not even kidding. This food pyramid has probably killed more people than the Holocaust. I actually looked at this up today, with AI. I mean, the number of people that have died in the United States from obesity, type 2 diabetes, and I have all these graphs because my company, which was an incentive-based program to help employers help their employees lose weight and save money at the same time, I had these CDC maps that showed the growth of obesity. You may have seen them. These horrifying animated maps. And we went from basically 1985, where no one was morbidly obese and a very small percentage were overweight to now like over 80% of Americans are overweight or obese. And now actually the obese category may have even be higher than the overweight category. Well, I mean, this started with the introduction of this food pyramid, which absolutely destroys your insulin levels by putting 6 to 11 servings of carbs at the base. You know, if you eat that diet, you're always going to be hungry. I mean, this is, you know, fats, yes, fats have more calories than carbs, but if you eat fat, you will actually feel satisfied. All this is doing with this at the base is spiking your insulin levels. So you're always going to be hungry. You're always going to want to eat more, and you are not going to obtain nutrients. So this has literally killed, based on, you know, whatever, doing a little bit of analysis, like 12 million people have probably died from unnecessary diseases caused by poor nutritional guidance pushed. It wasn't just suggested, it was pushed. I remember this stuff being in public school health textbooks. So who was responsible? It was the USDA, influenced by the corn industry, the grain industry, and by actually the same people, Kellogg's and General Mills. Has anybody been held accountable? No, absolutely. Not a single person was fired. This is why I mean, I don't believe in public health. And again, I'm going back to, this isn't a situation where we had gold standard science that made a mistake, or where there's new gold standard science that replaced the old gold standard science because we learned more. That has nothing to do with any of this. We have bad things that were put in there through, you know, the capture of regulatory agencies, which, by the way, they will always be captured. RFK is not going to fix this. There is no scenario in which you don't end up with having regulatory capture. This is why you move all of this out of the government sector and let the market solve all of these problems. You're not going to have, you know, like, it's like this idea, like you're going to have these dragnet style, like, people at the FDA and the USDA who are passionate about government food labeling. It's never happened before. It's never going to happen again. And we're in 2025. We have decentralization. We have AI. We have different technologies. It's absurd to even have the USDA or the FDA, but no one was held accountable. And then they came up with My Plate, which is equally absurd from the original food pyramid. And then, as I said before, this Lancet food pyramid is worse than the 1992 food pyramid because it has low to no meat, sugar, and insect protein. So don't trust this, but hopefully as you're seeing this, I hope you're getting as angry about this as I am, because I've got 5 more to go through tomorrow. I guess I have 1 more for today. And this is only the tip of the iceberg. And this is just nutrition. Nutrition is not some outlier where it's this like, oh, well, this only happens within this field. The last one I have for today is red meat causes heart disease. So this has been pushed heavily for a long time. And now it gets pushed, even though the evidence shows that that's not the case. The actual problem was processed foods, not red meat itself. They haven't switched this because they want to keep this narrative, because the new narrative with the UN 2030 agenda is that red meat is bad for environmental purposes. So they just don't want us eating red meat. It's never had anything to do with health. The first spin on this was that it caused heart disease, and now they're not even going to state that it's about health issues. They're going to say it's about the environment. They're going to say it's about methane. They're going to say it's about cow farts. So who funded this? Well, the sugar industry funded this. This is also an extension, this argument, of the American Heart Association and Ansel Keys. So the same guy that I mentioned before that pushed the low-fat diet, well, this is where this got caught up in that, because red meat is high in fat and cholesterol, and so it's in the same category as eggs, and it's a cause of heart attack. There's no evidence for this. It's a fascinating story. I may even play the parts of an interview in future lectures about kind of the history with this Ansel Keys guy. So, but this Ansel Keys, this stuff goes back decades. This isn't like, oh, you know, so many people are like, oh, well, gee, this just got bad with COVID and Fauci recently. This did not just get bad. And again, a lot of this happens, a lot of the research that I did was in a fasted state, doing a 38-day fast, you know, the last time. I now always take the approach of, okay, I'm not going to look at just what this recent example of where we may have cronyism or a captured entity. I then go back and say, what is the history of the FDA? What is the history of public health? Where do these organizations start? Who were the original people? What was their founding mission? And every time I go back and do this, you know, public health and the World Health Organization and everything like this was very much driven by eugenics. It was very much driven by population control from the get-go. You actually had Aldous Huxley's brother was the first head of UNESCO, the science arm of the UN. He was a hardcore eugenicist, hardcore for population control. This was the beginning of the organization. And so the way I like to summarize it is this: once you learn that these organizations that they manage to propagandize, like the FBI. The FBI is like the men in gray or men in black or whatever it is that are standing up for our rights. These G-men, and they've had TV shows. I guess they have TV shows on it now. I don't have TV, but I saw that there's like a whole like franchise of shows called FBI, and they had them decades ago, even when TV was black and white, glorifying the FBI. When you actually study the FBI, you find out that J. Edgar Hoover, who headed it, was running a blackmail organization, and he himself was being blackmailed by the mafia. That was the beginning of the FBI. Go back and study the history of the CIA, study the history of these organizations. So they started out with bad intent, and then they've had no accountability and no feedback loop. So there's no way these organizations have gotten better. There is no history of an organization that started out with malicious intent with no feedback becoming a useful, fruitful, and productive organization. And so this is true in all of these areas, but it's really true in this health area. So again, that's my rant today. Those are just 5, but I'll do more. And if I keep doing this for days and days and weeks or however long this fast ends up going, then I'm going to hit a bunch of other areas too that are public health, and then even outside of public health. Because what I want to do is I want to get people to start thinking about how the world works. Because if what you thought about 3 meals a day and breakfast being the most important and low fat, if all of that was fake and pushed by government and pushed by public health and pushed by propaganda, then you're going to find that everything else is. And then that really starts opening up your mind and realizing, okay, I truly need to get out of the system and take control of my own life and not rely on this at all. Like, don't give up your agency. Don't assume because a doctor said it that it's right. In fact, assume that if a doctor said it, that it is just propaganda that came from big pharma and from an accreditation program that doesn't have optimizing human health as a priority, because that is true. So your doctor might not know that. Your doctor either went through it and actually thinks that, well, this doctor behind me went through this and this has been going on for a long time, so it must be good. Otherwise, somebody would have figured it out by now, right? A lot of the world operates that. Most of the world operates that way. And so once you learn to question everything like that, it is truly part of taking control of your own life, your own thoughts, your own actions, and your own emotions. So again, the calls to action here: sign the open letter, freerogernow.org. Every signature helps. We want to get momentum with this. Plan to attend his hearing on May the 12th in LA. I will be there. I'm going to be flying back from Amsterdam, and I hope I don't have to go, because I hope that he's out by then, but I will gladly be there if the hearing exists, and it would be great to have as many people show their support as possible. I encourage you to join the fast on Monday. I'm going to do the podcast again every night, but on Monday, I'm going to announce my intentions for how long this fast is going to be and how we might level it up. I think it's actually been very successful. We don't have a lot of people watching tonight, but last night we had 8,000 or 9,000 simultaneous listeners. I've been talking to a lot of other people, a lot of groups, a lot of individuals that want to help out, that want to help promote it. I think that this actually has the ability to get substantial legs. And I actually think the content that's going to come out of this is going to be very, very useful and very, very helpful, not only for Roger, but in general for the idea of empowering people to take control of their own lives, which is intertwined with Roger's philosophy as well. So to me, this is, I'm glad to be able to do this. Like, as much as I wish I didn't, the circumstances were not like this, I actually think we can make a lot of good come out of this. Please share this podcast and other content. And actually, when I do these live streams, if you could share at the time and like it and comment when they go live, it would really help, because I am completely shadow banned at this point. I mean, I'm looking right now and it's just, I have a very small amount. I have 11 likes on this. We have 806 views, but the reason I play the music at the beginning for 5 to 10 minutes is because X is actually the only platform where I have any traction. I'll talk about how you can help me with some other social media channels tomorrow or the next day. But X is where I get all of the views. The problem is, unlike with Rumble or YouTube, where I can actually provide a link in advance and people can know where to go, you only get to see the link when I push the button and go live. So what ends up happening is I play the music for 5 or 10 minutes. And then what I'm doing is I'm copying the link. I'm tagging a bunch of people. There are all of these limits and restrictions as to how many people you can tag in one post. So I'm DMing people, and then I'm going over to Signal, and then I'm going over to Telegram, and I'm sharing the link live. That's how we get most of the people here. So I could use a lot of help if people would be willing to actually to share it when it goes live and to share it in groups, because otherwise, if I just put out a post, like I'll put out a post tomorrow morning saying, hey, will you go take a look at this? And I've got 45,000 followers or whatever, and maybe 500 people will see the post. So it's really hard to get the word out. And I don't think it's because the content's bad or the topic isn't interesting. It's because just simply how the social media platform works and how shadow banned this is there. Again, initial fasting resources, Dr. Berg is great. Again, I have no financial interest. Nobody's paying me for this, but I've learned a lot from Dr. Berg. He has hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of lectures and resources and everything else. And I started out with intermittent fasting, but he does go into some prolonged fasting, but not as much as Dr. Alan Goldhamer, who actually runs a water fast clinic that does 40-hour medically supervised water fast. And he's been doing this for years. So he has all kinds of information on this, and also a lot of data about, people who have been cured and a whole wide range of issues. It's funny, I reached out to Mike Adams today, Health Ranger, who's launching this AI called Enoch. And I said, hey, can you, run a test for me, find out the link between fasting and curing various diseases? Because what's unique is, and he told me this, he's spent now almost $2 million building this AI. And what's unique about his AI is he's trained it on data sets that you're not going to find with X, and certainly not ChatGPT or Claude. And so if you know Health Ranger, I mean, he's been putting out content, and he's been banned all over the place, but he's been putting out content on alternative health related content and other issues. I happen to know he trained his AI on my book, on The Final Countdown. So he has a really interesting set of data. So I asked him to run a thing. So what does your AI say about prolonged fasting and halting, reversing, or improving various conditions? And, he shot back: high blood pressure, all 141 cases improved; colitis, 77 out of 88 cases; sinusitis, 64 out of 67 cases; ulcers, 20 out of 23 cases; bronchitis, 39 out of 42; cataract, 3 out of 4 cases; cancer, all 5 cases were improved. And again, this isn't necessarily a huge data set. He has a data set that you will not find through the other AIs. And so there's a lot of really cool things. I'm more excited about his AI than almost anything healthcare information related wise. And then Dave Asprey wrote a book called Fast This Way, which I actually didn't get around to reading until after I'd already done a couple 100 days worth of fasting, but it does provide good information about different types of fasting, prolonged, intermittent, different strategies and everything else. So these are all good starting resources. So with that, happy to open this up. Oh, I see we've got I am for I am.
Hey, how you feeling?
How are you?
How you doing?
I'm feeling better now that we're through the podcast. It was rough, like starting the podcast. But I feel great now. I actually feel very energized now.
Your brain's firing. You feel a fog lift?
The fog is lifting. This is the peak day for autophagy. So this is where there's the most, bad stuff kind of getting rinsed out. So I'm just making sure to properly hydrate. And so now, like, the worst part is over. So now whatever happens from here on out is just upside.
It's funny you mentioned Dr. Berg, because look what I'm drinking. I don't know if you can see this.
Oh yeah, there you go. Is that the raspberry?
The raspberry Dr. Berg, yeah.
Yep. There you go.
There's I like his products. I like his products a lot. I'm not endorsing him or him personally or Yeah, anything. It's a personal preference, but that's what I trust for electrolytes.
Same. I don't trust him. He sells a lot of different products. I trust him for two things: vitamin D and electrolytes.
Oh, and I trust him for those two, but there's one more. Is the natural greens or whatever, the powdered green?
Yep.
It's in the same container, basically.
I haven't tried those. Are those good? Is that good?
Yeah, it is. It is really good. Talks about it's a while since I've seen. It's been a few years since I saw his video on it, but essentially he was looking for a specific source for powdered microgreens that are not heated when they're dehydrated and thus losing their nutrients. And then secondly, he wanted the soil to have a certain alkaline or something, and he found it in this like salt beds in Utah, where they actually grew microgreens, and then he worked with them to be able to turn it into a powder form, but not destroy it from high pasteurization or heat, not pasteurization, but heat. And it's been a while since I've had it. I used to drink it every day, especially when I was on keto and working out, and when I was in karate and mixed martial arts. So it's been a few years since I've had it.
I may give it a try. One of the things that the Dr. Berg pushes really heavily is that you need to eat a lot of cruciferous vegetables, and so he got me on that kick. So I will eat a half a pound to a pound of spinach or kale every day to get nutrients. Again, it's when I'm focused and when I'm actually not traveling all the time and not kind of in a different thing, and it worked. So yeah, he has good stuff. The interesting thing about Dr. Berg, Dr. Goldhammer, and even Dr. Joe Dispenza, they're not medical doctors; they're all chiropractors.
Yes. Ironically, right?
It is. It's funny how that worked.
Yeah, it is. It's probably some kind of personality type or where their brain is wired to be able to think differently and a little bit outside the box from traditional medicine. Having said that, my wife and I, and especially myself, we used to, and it's been a while, I would go to the local farmer's market and buy microgreens where I'm at. There's a vendor that has microgreens, and I swear by those, boy, as far as nutritional value. You keep freezing up, Aaron, but it's all good. When you freeze, you're looking good.
Oh well. So no, I'm moving the screen around. It shouldn't be a connection thing. I was getting rid of the presentation and making it so it's just you and I talking.
Okay. No, seriously, I think you are locking up. We're hearing you fine, but your video locks up every once in a while. I like you got your free Roger, your tablet there on the back screen with free Roger. I unfortunately have missed a good portion of your conversation time. I was listening a little bit on X and that kind of thing, and I know it's definitely late for you, but you might be a night person. I have to be up at like 4 a.m. again, so I'm going to be cutting out early tonight. But I can't emphasize this enough: what you're doing and sending out the message out, and heightening the awareness of Roger Ver's case, what he's facing, and how that could even set a precedence for all of us. I think we have to remember that there's part of this case has to do with client privileges, confidentiality, and a part of this case is obviously how far the IRS can go, and sentencing and enforcing laws. So we have to keep that in mind, that you never know, that knock might be on our door someday, and we certainly want to stop this from becoming a court precedence. And just another reason, if you're a small blocker and you don't like Roger, look at it from a legal perspective, if nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, again, the people that will be most negatively impacted by this would be Bitcoin maxis, because they're going after his Bitcoin, right? This isn't the time frames involved and everything else. Like, this is primarily about Bitcoin. So what it means by this case is, one, they lied to the grand jury to begin with. So there's that as the starting point. So these are things that apply outside of crypto. This is a DOJ function. So the DOJ lied to a grand jury. So there never should have been an indictment to begin with, because it was based on the complete omission of information. Then they had the IRS, armed IRS agents, violate his attorney-client privilege by breaking into the office. So again, you don't have to be in crypto. This is a fundamental violation of your rights to have a privileged communication with your attorney. Also, what it means is, based on what they're claiming, they're trying to claim fraud, but what the evidence shows that they didn't show the grand jury is that Roger was complying with his counsel on these matters, and in fact taking a more conservative approach. So it means now you also can't rely on counsel. And so this isn't even a crypto issue. This is a fundamental constitutional rights issue, and something that every individual or business should be concerned about. So whether you like Roger or not, and by the way, the very few people that don't like Roger are the people that will also be the most negatively impacted by this. 100%,
Yes.
Every person on the planet should be on board with supporting Roger.
Right. The negatively impacted out of their ignorance.
Yep.
Yeah. Can you clarify something for me? When the IRS raided the office, was it his accountant's office, attorney's office, both, or his personal business office? Which office and where? Do you have any?
I know for a fact that they raided his attorney's office, and they raided his business office, which actually led to and caused some people to quit over the emotional distress of having armed IRS agents come into an office. Well, I mean, again, if you're not guilty, but nevertheless, I mean, employees don't know that. I mean, there are a lot of people that believe that the government actually has integrity still. So which is unfortunate. So some of these people, there are people that assume you're guilty just because you get raided, right? And I mean, and by the way, think about this in the context now of all these people getting swatted. And it's just, again, this is part of the culture of, I did mention this, I was doing my rant about public health, but I mean, it's they have these TV shows. My ex-wife used to watch this show Bones on TV, and I'm kind of like this is a show that's glorifying the FBI. And now they actually have shows like called the FBI. And by the way, they all seem to be on this CBS network, which we know from the 1970s and the Church Committee actually had plants directly from the CIA. So when you're seeing a television show called the FBI, then it actually has literally people from the FBI writing the script. It's propaganda. Or like that TV show Dragnet from the whatever 60s.
Yeah, from the 50s or 60s, whenever it was, and later the movie.
Yeah, now we're going to glorify, the police, but when you realize that this was actually all propaganda, but people do buy it because, I mean, again, popular TV shows with this, and so they believe this. So I would assume his accountants got raided too. Everybody seemed to get raided in this situation, and it's heartbreaking that it's not just one thing too. I mean, down to the point where we're going to say, okay, well, you're fighting extradition, so that means you're a fugitive. Right. Like they never, it's not like they step back and say, well, maybe we shouldn't have violated. Well, you know what? Let's give him a pass. We already violated his constitutional rights twice. Let's give him a pass on this other thing. Nah, that's not in the cards. Like they're doubling down on unconstitutional and illegal behavior. It's all immoral, but then there are other, levels of hell that they've added on top of it. So
agreed. I don't know if I don't know what time you started your podcast, but I was watching Sal, and he had 3 clips from last night. He played the video of everyone's, kind of the montage of Free Roger and who Roger was or to them, and who Roger is today and what he's facing, and which is an excellent video. So he played that. And he played 2 more excerpts. another one of that his comments and talking about Roger Ver, and of course he talked more about the case in between these videos that he showed on his podcast, and then finally he ended up with Zano and a section from last night's show on Zano. So, and I saw that he had probably about 6,000 people on X watching him when that was playing. So,
yeah, no. We were actually. He was going to try to do. We were going to try to do a crossover where we were going to have me. So I'm not sure how we were going to do it, but I was going to, simultaneously be on his show and have this show going, and we weren't able to get the logistics out. But we ended up talking till midnight last night, so we're going to be doing a lot of crossover work. I have me on his show, so there's a lot of overlap now, and so I'm very excited about that. I thought last night, yeah.
Oh, go ahead. You thought last night what?
I thought last night was terrific.
Yeah.
And there are great clips from that. And by the way, these dialogues are probably the source of some of the best information.
Yes, absolutely. As a matter of fact, it's kind of funny because I signed out and was getting ready for bed and I couldn't turn it off. I was listening to it until you guys signed off for the night. Then I finally went to sleep. I had to get up early. It was a really good conversation. And I admire Sal, and that's one thing. I have not purchased any of his books, and I need to do that and read those and also show my support for his work. It was kind of interesting how you were talking about how you probably crossed paths at PorcFest in 2012 or 13 or something like that, and that was his inspiration for his 3D printing of guns.
Yeah, and now we're gonna do 3D printed guns at the Zano Moneratopia tent. And now he's fired up about PorcFest.
Oh yeah, he is.
So I think truly we're gonna make PorcFest happen. PorcFest is going to be truly wonderful, and I really do think that Roger will be there. I think that all of the attention and efforts that everybody's putting into this, and obviously he has his team and whatever he's doing, he's got great people. I think it's going to happen, and then it's going to be as earth shattering as it was in 2012. I mean, again, so many great things happened. Right. Bitcoin, none of this crypto stuff would be where it is today without those events. Without Free Stater Ian Freeman having Free Talk Live, and then Roger listening to it, and then Roger going to Free State events and onboarding what became an early class of OGs, none of this would be happening.
Right.
So what if we take the lessons of the hijacking, the lessons of everything that's gone on? We now have battle scars, right? We got a lot of battle scars, but so what? Learning experiences, and then let's plow forward. And that's what I think is going to happen. So.
There's an OG from back in that day. Last name was Mayer, and he had like the 200 moving average. It was called the Mayer 200 or something. I don't know.
Trace.
Yeah. I liked him, but he was hardcore, maxi after the fork. But I still liked, his comments and what he had to say about sound money. He was spot on, and then he just kind of fell off the map. Any ideas what happened to him? Or
I think I just saw something. Yeah, here we go. Trace Meyer and Roger Ver discussing what he and early Bitcoiners did for the space. Roger Ver and other Bitcoiners took the risk. So he's saying good things about Roger as of a couple days ago.
Oh, good. That's on X. I need to find
it. It's on X. I'll post the link in the comments, but I haven't heard about him either in years. So I don't know how active he is, but at least he put out some good comments about Roger. I really, it's disheartening that some people should absolutely be saying good things.
Right.
We got somebody else here, Deadheaded. Let's see how this goes.
All right.
Hello.
Oh, he's muted.
Oh, he's
Deadhead,
muted.
You're muted.
There we go. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Hey guys, great talk. Hey, I agree. Great talk last night. I was going to bed and couldn't put it down. Couldn't go to sleep till you guys finished. So it really got interesting. And Aaron, we know each other from back in the OG Ravencoin days.
Okay.
So I'm an asset head. I love assets. Build use cases all the time.
Are you in
Dream
Florida?
about the- Say it again.
You in Florida?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I know who you are. I just didn't know the
Yeah.
deadhead name. Okay. Yeah. Good to hear from you.
Yeah. And George from Philly.
Yes.
I haven't talked to George in a while, but I understand you guys are really good friends.
George has been my friend for 30 years.
Yeah. He's a great, I try to get, I don't know. Is he still working with those houses?
He's not. No, he's not. Right now, he's actually in California temporarily. He's not living out there. Usually, he would actually hop on here. So, but he's in California right now. So he'll be a regular appearing on this, I suspect, over the next few weeks. He'll also be at PorkFest. By the way, I have to encourage everybody to go to PorkFest.
Oh, I'd love to go. I wish
Do whatever you can. We're going to make this one a really big deal.
Okay, let's talk about a couple things, because one thing I wanted since talk about you is I got questions about Xano that you may be able to answer.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah, I love Xano. I own Xano. I bought Xano a while ago. Luckily, a little bit when it was down into 2s and 3s. But with their asset layer, like with Ravencoin, I can attach an IPFS file. I can, it's easy to make an asset and attach it to something. If I make an asset on Xano, how do I know what it is other than the name? All the metadata is mutable. I mean, is not immutable. It can be changed.
Well, you could, and I've actually talked to them about that. We just haven't pushed it because it's a priority. There's a notes field. When you use the wallet to create an asset, there's a notes field. And I actually talked to them about, because I've created an NFT in Xano with a link to an IPFS hash. It's just that the wallet doesn't have a browser built into it, but there's nothing preventing you from putting an IPFS hash into the notes field in Xano. And there's nothing preventing them, other than market demand, from having that display or having another wallet owner.
Right. But the nodes field can be changed on an asset. Apparently, when I asked in Discord, it was months ago.
Okay. I'll have to check on that.
Yeah, because that was my one thing, if you make one not like in Ravencoin reissuable, excuse me, then the IPFS is locked in. But could you solve that problem by, say, wrapping a Ravencoin asset?
That is one of the things that I've been interested in for quite some time. I brought it up to them, and I've even posted about this in some of the marketing groups, which is they're building this so that you're going to be able to bridge Ethereum, and they're doing a lot of things so that you're going to be able to actually leverage some of the native. Their approach is, let's leverage the native capabilities of other blockchains and then just use Xano as the wrapper to make it private. And their approach is that if we do that, then we're going to be able to work with multiple blockchains, and we're going to be able to ultimately be the part that makes other great technologies with other different attributes private.
So that's the only thing in my mind. Well, there's a lot of things. Ravencoin is but the original idea of Ravencoin was missing, was the privacy point.
Privacy's fundamentally missing, and it wasn't as much of a concern for me 4 years. It actually really only became a concern for me 6 to 9 months ago. And now I realize, now it's actually an Achilles heel. If you don't have privacy, then it's actually highly problematic.
Well, I actually, in some ways, I kind of disagree in some sort of situations. Like I kind of put together, you remember Mango Farms, right?
Yep.
Doug Pepe. His RIP 11, Ravencoin Improvement Proposal 11, is a fabulous piece of little code. But basically, you're taking a hash of an address and putting it into the unique address name and the unique name of the asset. So if that unique asset moves out of that address, it becomes invalid.
Yep.
So you can do a lot of things with that. Well, based on that, I built a marketplace. But one of the things is if let's say you're in any country and you're selling things digitally over the marketplace, one of the great features is you press a button and all your accounting's done. And you can't do that on a privacy chain if you're transferring assets for money and things like that. But if you use something like Xano for the payment function and use the rest of the, I hate to say Ravencoin, there are other blockchains out there. Evermore is one. There's a few more that I'm looking at Optio right now that can do the things that Ravencoin can do, and I think better. So I don't want to. I'm not shrilling Ravencoin. I'm just using that as examples for. But so privacy is great, I believe, in some places, but in some places you need to be able to track stuff.
Well, I mean, you can track your own stuff. It's just a question of whether somebody else can track it looking at the blockchain.
Right,
I mean,
but if I'm selling if I'm selling you a music, if I'm selling a music, let's use a music NFT, and I'm taking 90% of it, 8% going to my agent and 2% to my marketing company. And when you buy that music from me, and I get that money doesn't go directly. My portion of the money goes directly to me using the dividend function. But let's say I write I write a song and I issue 100 ownership tokens, and I own 90 and somebody else owns 8 and my marketer owns 2. So when the payments come in, the payments are automatically done to the other people. Well, I'm going to need to track that for tax purposes and things like that in my side of the business.
Yep.
So some things I'm just saying some things need to be transparent. The other thing is, because you're talking about doing, gold backs into Xano or gold backs and Xano. Is that correct?
Well, actually, gold, not gold backs.
Oh, okay.
It's a gold backed privacy token.
Okay. I was thinking about an issue where why, I love the gold backs and we need a gold back token, but obviously going from paper gold backs to a digital token and back and forth is an issue. But with a non-privacy chain, you can track the individual assets. In fact, I don't know if you saw it, somebody, a developer that's been around for a while, he's working on a nice little explorer that can download right from IPFS, run locally, and you can trace assets, trace coins. Just like
so there are two functions, and there are two components of rolling out the gold coin. Xano has something called an auditable wallet. And so you can use the auditable wallet for managing the actual supply of the gold and the interaction of that with the vaults, but then still have the privacy tokens issued privately. So there's a way to do it so you can do both. But I will say, from my perspective, and if you've been following me at all, you realize, like, we need money outside of government. I don't give a fuck about working with the SEC or complying with any of this. Like, we are facing absolute, complete, total digital tyranny. So all of this, and I think a lot of where Ravencoin got caught up is, we're going to do, security tokens working with the SEC, which in retrospect was a pipe dream, because nobody in traditional finance wants to give up their control. They're not interested in stopping short selling. And they were clearly able to manipulate the political process to make sure that Ravencoin and Box didn't happen and that other things did. So we are in a situation right now where, to me, privacy is actually critical from an existential perspective, because that's how bad the threat is. And, and unfortunately, people are now complacent, thinking, Trump is anti-CBDC, but these stable coins are absolutely surveillance and have all of the negative attributes of CBDCs. It's just that it's being issued by Jamie Dimon instead of Jerome Powell, which is a difference without a distinction.
100%. I completely 100% agree, and to the point where I wrote 2 bills for Florida, and I think they should be for every state. And I think I touched on it. One's a precious metals bullion depository, so that so we can have private bullion depositories within our state, and I think all 50 states need those. And then based on that they can issue digital tokens based on those precious metals. And they're simple bills. I crafted one, I think was a Texas bill. I just took it and recrafted it. And one was a Tennessee bill, and I added in some blockchain stuff for that. And I think they would work for every.
I guess so I've worked with the Goldback company, and I've actually I've talked to all of these guys. The big issue that I have with all of this is, we know they've confiscated gold in the United States. So anytime you're doing a centralized thing like that, like why would I trust a state depository? There's actually a history of state-backed stuff as well. What we actually need is money separated from state.
Private depository.
and it's not just the federal government. So this is why, from my perspective, the hardest part about launching this gold token is creating a decentralized network of vaults that are in different countries and actually spreading some of that geopolitical risk. And the U.S. is not on the list. It's not on the short list. I mean, we really are not competitive in most things. And so, fiat currency doesn't work, but even gold-backed state money doesn't work. And I'm always worried about things that are centralized. How hard would it be when push comes to shove for the feds to come in and raid a state depository? Realistically, they'll use internet. They'll use interstate commerce. They'll use a whole list of things. And so, we really don't have. We have to admit to ourselves that we really do not have a rule of law, and the Constitution is dead. Most people don't want to admit that. People still are kind of in a fantasy land on that.
I'm 100% with you on that. We have no rule of law at all at any level. I can say that definitively, battling my school board here in the past.
Yeah. No one ever beats a school board. That's rare.
I beat them. I beat them bad. And I ran into a guy out here called Dave Jose. Dave Cares for You on YouTube, and Dave got his children taken and went to the books and started learning. And he figured out that there's a system that our forefathers gave us called notices and affidavits, constitutional notices and affidavits. And it's a way for you to address your grievances with your legislative and elected officials, bypassing the courts and forcing them into private arbitration of your choice at their expense. And I got my school board to lift the mask mandates. Well, they put them in first, you could opt out, parents could opt out, and then they put them in where you couldn't opt out. And I got them to lift that weeks before they said they were going to do that by serving them with these notices and affidavits. And then couple months later, I got 2 days after I got certified mail. I had done it at the school board, but I didn't certified mail one. I got them to drop the lawsuit against Governor DeSantis that the school board had spent $40,000 of our money on to try and constitutionally take away our constitutional rights. So there are ways to address these things, and these have been used. They were used all throughout COVID for myriad of different effects, and they can be effective. But you're right. For the most part, we're lawless, or should I say, where the sovereign citizens are the police. They're the ones that, and the sheriffs and the politicians, because they're the ones that are above any law.
Yep, indeed. I see. We have Steve Thurmond here as well. It's great. Thank you for joining. It's been a long time. I've been traveling for so long. It's like it's been a blur the last 4 months really, and so it's great to see Steve on here as well. And obviously, now that I'm doing these podcasts daily for a while, this will be a good opportunity to get a whole bunch of people into the conversation. But I always enjoy Steve's perspective, and he's a hardcore, longtime advocate of peer-to-peer digital cash and Bitcoin Cash, and has worked on some really innovative things. I remember he was going to Slovenia for the BCH Bliss conference and paying for all of it, and going and kind of documenting the whole excursion using cryptocurrency and using BCH. So that's very awesome. We need more of that. And Steve, I hope you can attend Pork Fest. You're on mute, by the way. I don't know if that's, hold on, let me make sure that's not me that's muted you. No.
By the way, Deadheaded, I have to agree with your comments and thank you.
We got a comment here from Logos Rising. Why would you want to pay taxes on anything? The income tax doesn't even apply to most Americans. Check out Dave Champion and the Tax Honesty Movement. Oh, we got
Dave Champion and the Tax Odyssey Movement. Okay.
We've got Medora. We've got a new mystery guest here too. I will boot people if it's inappropriate, of course, but willing to give everybody a shot just because why not? I'll trust but verify. Hello, Medora. Sorry. You're muted. So Steve and Medora, you're muted. If I don't know if you intended to be in this. I know I sent Steve a link. Any event, happy.
There you go.
Hi, I didn't know what I was joining. I just clicked the link, so I can leave if you want. I was watching on YouTube. But I was the one who posted about Dave Champion.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Okay. Oh, great. Well, yeah. Well, welcome. We actually, I really enjoy the discussion part of these podcasts the most, and happy to have new people join, and would love to hear more about this. I spoke at a conference in Miami, and there was somebody that it might have been him speaking about this.
Yeah. So he actually has a really great book that you can buy called Income Tax Shattering the Myths, and he's deeply researched all of the tax regulations and codes, and very clearly lays out why they don't apply to most Americans, and we've just been deceived into believing they do. So I highly recommend people check it out. His website is drreality.com, like just drreality.com. And he has two Rumble channels also. Just search Dave Champion.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm checking.
I wrote that down. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Get out.
I'll mute myself now. So
Okay.
Thanks for the info.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Hey, Aaron, I wanted to mention to you on your fast here. It turned out I was making the comments about black. That's my daughter's account on YouTube, or it's my account, but my daughter uses it. It's her name on YouTube. But Jack Cruz and a couple other guys, the blue light in our phones, our screens, our TVs is burning out our dopamine receptors in our eyes. It's addicting us completely. It's disrupting our sleep. It completely interrupts our metabolism. In fact, Jack, just to prove it, because he was, he's a neurosurgeon and he was 270 pounds, and just like another doctor I was listening to today, a heart surgeon who was way overweight, and he did all these things to lose weight and couldn't lose weight, and then found out, started getting into the light stuff and literally lost all his weight by changing his circadian rhythm.
Yep.
Without changing his diet.
Yeah, I've watched that, and I usually, now that I'm doing these every night, I usually have blue blocker glasses, and I do red light. I'm not entirely sold yet on methylene blue. I actually have some. I've tried it out. In fact, I did the combination of taking methylene blue and then actually using the red light. I didn't notice anything, and then I've researched it a little bit. I'm still wait and see on methylene blue, but nevertheless, Cruz is definitely a very, very interesting guy, and I follow him, and I've watched his that 4-hour interview he had with Danny Jones, and and I'm always interested to see. He's a Bitcoin maxi. He could use some help on that, but otherwise, I think he's a pretty solid guy.
Yeah, he is definitely a Bitcoin maxi. He needs to be re-educated on that part, which I believe he will. He's a truth seeker. There's no doubt. About that. Now, I've been on methylene blue now for a couple of weeks. My wife also, and she's a sensitive one, and she has seen some great benefits from it. My energy levels are definitely up. So I'm definitely seeing positive about that, and I'm about to start hydrogen water after reading all the studies.
Yep.
Because that just seems fantastic. Have you had any experience with hydrogen water?
I think we might have hydrogen water. We were just at an event in New York, and my wife bought we have 2 bottles. She said, make sure the kids don't get into this. It's like $15 each. That might be hydrogen water.
No. Hydrogen will gas off quickly.
Okay.
So you can do it 2 ways. They make these tablets that you can infuse it with, or you can micro bubble it into there. I'm making one out in the garage, but I'm also getting a hydrogen bottle. But the extra hydrogen is anti-inflammatory, antioxidants. It improves your memory, improves it. The study. I've got to see more studies, but there is one very, very good double-blind placebo study that they did with a bunch of elderly people, average age of 70, for 6 months drinking hydrogen water daily. And they proclaimed that they actually regrew telomeres.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now there's only one thing I've ever seen that regrows telomeres substantially and gets rid of zombie cells, and that's your hyperbaric oxygen chamber.
I've done that. I've done that. I had this great biohacking gym. Well, you're in Florida. There's a gym called Biohackers in Weston, and I think that they have another one now that just opened in West Palm. And the woman who runs it is a PhD who was actually working on stem cell research for a biotech company. And so it was like this, like I found it as this hole in the wall, but I was doing cryo, red light, hyperbaric chamber, this thing called Vespa, where you put cold compresses on your arms and your legs and you do the exercise bike. And so it like eliminates the lactic acid buildup. They had it was phenomenal. And the hyperbaric chamber is incredible as well. I miss it because I don't have access to that here. But I've tried to hack it by buying my own red light and some of this other stuff, but it's just not quite the same.
Yeah, well, they had those chambers. They for a while they were only like $6,000. I don't know what they are now, but did you read the protocols out of Israel that they did for the aging study? Yeah, they were doing. I mean, was it 5 days a week, 90 minutes with a break, 5-minute break every 20 minutes, so you didn't over oxygen.
Oh wow!
That's they were doing a lot, and they did it for 3 months, and that's where they got the anti-aging. They were talking like 36%, 25% telomere growth, and 32% reduction in non-replicating cells.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
That's
you can look it up. It very staggering. And then this other study with the hydrogen water, if you see studies where they've slowed it down, or the telomere reduction, or maybe a 0.5%, but the hydrogen water study that I was reading was I forget the number, but it was like 10 or 12%. So it was a significant change in your DNA.
Yep.
Have you followed David Sinclair in his work at all?
The name sounds familiar. I probably have.
I have. I'm highly suspicious. I mean, it's a whole bunch of here's some clinical. There's no long-term. Actually, I disagree with the whole approach with studies. I think there's something fundamentally wrong. It comes down to materialism versus kind of energy. But I bought his book and I've watched some of his stuff, and I'm not convinced.
Yeah, I wasn't convinced when he was doing a lecture and he's drinking red wine.
Or Scotch. Yeah, I think he drinks Scotch too.
Oh, you're kidding me, really?
Yeah. He said that's part of it, and Well, then of course there's Brian Johnson, but I don't know if I'm trusting a guy that got vaxxed.
No kidding. Is he the gentleman from England, from UK?
Brian Johnson?
Yes.
I don't think he's from the UK. He might be.
There's another one who is studying life extension, just on a different path than David Sinclair, and he's from the UK. Heavy British accent. He's got a long beard.
Oh, Aubrey de Grey.
That's the one.
Yeah.
I'm horrible with names.
Yeah, he's been around for a long time.
Right.
He was really popular 15 years ago. And I saw him on my feed. I haven't followed him much lately. I feel like I listened to him a long time ago and then haven't since. So I don't even remember what his focus area was. Just that he was focused on life extension as a concept, but I don't even remember what his kind of angle was or theory.
I do remember Richard Hart had actually donated or something like $10 million towards his research.
Oh, wow.
And he was, of course, very grateful and was on a video with Richard, with providing a little bit more details on his research. And Richard had been studying him and Sinclair for quite some time. And I want to say this is probably around 4 years ago.
Yeah, I'll have to take a look. I think I remember he did a TED talk. I'm remembering when I was listening to him, and I hadn't even moved to New Hampshire yet, so that had to have been pre-2008.
Before I drop off, Aaron, I want to let you know, just if you want to start thinking about maybe if daisy chaining your fast and having somebody take over after you, I would like to throw my volunteer myself for trying to do a 7-day fast as well.
Well, I'm
the
thinking
most
about.
I've done is 4.
I'm thinking about doing 40.
Yeah, I know. So if you think about that, and if we have other people that are interested in, maybe we would just have it one long fast with multiple individuals that would coincide with yours, or pick up when you leave. When you stop, someone else picks up the chain.
Well, I was thinking of putting together a site where we could have people indicate how many days they've fasted and have like a counter for total number of days.
Oh, that'd be great.
I mean, I haven't fully decided on this yet, but I'm definitely leaning this way because actually, I touch on all of the fasting stuff every day, but I've spent so much time researching this that I do think it's like a mind-blowing thing that again, it's one of these things where, of course, there aren't clinical studies because there's zero money in it. And
Right.
So when you do actually find the information and you find what's happened, and then when you actually just think about it for a second, oh, well, this is what happens with your body. So our approach is we're going to give people chemo and hope they make it out and it kills all the bad stuff. But we're not thinking about what the body itself would do. And it's not part of, and of course, nobody's testing it because medical schools don't even teach anything about it.
No.
So it's one of those things where I think this is one of those, it can crack the code of so many things. And as I'm in day 3, I just remember I have, issues with sinuses sometimes, like all of it goes away. And so the question for me is going to be actually coming out of the fast, what process am I going to use to hack in a similar, methodical way to come out of it? And I'll talk about this as we get later into this, but I can't remember whether it's 7 days or 10 days, but your taste buds completely reset.
Wow.
So I remember the first time I did a long fast, maybe it was 7 days. I think it was 7 days. I used to drink a lot of Diet Coke. I used to drink a ton of Diet Coke. Don't drink any of it anymore. Completely cut it out. But I used to love like Coke Zero, right? And when I got out of the 7-day fast and I went to go drink some Diet Coke, it tasted like a mouthful of chemicals. It was absolutely disgusting. So I'm not even kidding. Your taste buds completely transform. So if you remain present and you're made conscious, you don't just jump right back into your old patterns and you listen to what your body is telling you that it wants, then you will actually find yourself, if you're conscious when you're going to the store, you'll find yourself picking food that you either didn't like or actually maybe have never even had before. You will just kind of like, if you're kind of in tune with what's going on, it's an amazing aspect of this. And so I've actually been, I've never done a fast with the benefit of AI. So like Mike, talking to Mike Adams and like, I'm like, can you just give me access to the thing yet? Like he's about ready to, but I'm like, I'm sorry. So I'm sending him questions. He's giving me the answers back. And I'm like, but truly there's a whole wealth of like, one thing is when you come out of it, repopulate your gut bacteria properly. So for me, It's like my wife actually makes sauerkraut, which is great. It's phenomenal sauerkraut, but it's like, you got to think about how you can really kickstart your way out of a process, because you've basically gone through a fast and you've fixed all the bad stuff, but that doesn't necessarily tell you what the bad stuff was that you did, so that you might just end up in the same place. And so it's anyway. I don't know how many people are going to listen to all of the podcasts, and I know a lot of people are like scared of fasting or don't even know what it is. But I think I'm hoping that this content, I might even make an online course out of it. That's one of the other things that I'm thinking, because it's powerful as an activism tool, but it's really powerful for resetting things and then getting present.
Yeah, and then being able to talk about it every night is almost like a diary format, or recording the results, or recording your thoughts, feelings as you're going through it, as your body's adjusting.
Yeah, and that's great. And this is why it'd be great if more people would do it. We don't all have to be in sync at the same place, but just for people to be able to share that information. Because usually, every time I've done a fast, I've done it by myself. Most people do fasting by themselves, but there's no reason that needs to be the case. And so I think it could be. I almost thought if you had a company or something, if you instead of doing a retreat where you go to retreat and everybody's like drinking alcohol or eating too much or whatever the social thing is, if you had a retreat where you fasted for 3 days, I think you'd have some pretty interesting insights, to be honest.
Probably would. Like you said, we could certainly, once the brain fog is lifted, you could have some amazing solutions to some problems that we're facing come out of that group.
Or maybe they're ridiculous. Like maybe part of it's like, all right, I'm in this state and this is what I think is going on. But maybe you end up finding out that, well, wait a minute, this is just batshit crazy. Who knows?
Aaron, I wanted to ask you touched on it briefly. What happens to your gut biome during this 40 days?
Well, it does a good job. It's like everything else. Your body, well, in theory, your body conserves the stuff that it needs and it gets rid of the bad stuff, which isn't to say that it gets rid of all the bad gut bacteria and only keeps the good gut bacteria, but it does get rid of a lot of the bad stuff. And I will say I will probably do a segment on poop, because it's really weird, because people often, so you think about this, if you're not eating for like 2, 3, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, or do you even go to the bathroom at all? And it turns out you do, and it's pretty it's pretty foul, because you are getting rid of stuff that has been trapped in there for a really long time. But it is important to try to like repopulate properly. And so I haven't hacked this yet. I'm trying to figure out what is the right combination of, fermented foods, kimchi and sauerkraut and things like that are great. And then you can supplement that with probiotics. But I always try to see if there's a natural way first.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Steve.
Cool. Thank you.
Hey, can you hear me all right?
Yeah. How are you?
Can you hear me, Aaron?
I can hear you.
I'm all right. I'm driving, so if there's too much, yeah, I can hear you guys fine. If I'm driving though, so if there's road noise or something, just feel free to cut me off. But I've been tuning in here on the road.
Awesome. How have you been?
I think I caught most of the show. Doing well. I think I caught most of the show thus far, and kudos to you for undergoing the fast in Roger's honor. As far as I understand it, that's what that's kind of the goal, right? That's what you're doing. Is that correct?
I'm doing that while also I've done a lot of fasting. I'm also trying to educate people about the power of fasting, because it really is something from since a lot of the audience are similarly, they're ad caps or voluntarists or whatever. It's very much a self-empowering thing, right? Like if you want to talk about taking your own agency, this is something where you are really you are taking control of this process, and it has all kinds of positive physical, mental, and emotional things. So I've wanted to try to express and teach people what I've learned over the years doing this, not only doing it, but then researching it. And then this is kind of a great way. And it's actually aligned even with Roger, because it's an empowering thing that you're doing and raising awareness of his situation. And I'm hoping others join in. I think, because you hear about a lot of political protests, it's usually like it's one guy doing it, or maybe a couple of people, but what if you got a bunch of people doing it all over the world?
Yeah, that's great. So this obviously isn't your first fast. What day are you on at this point?
This is day number 3.
Okay, all right. So you should be close to getting past the hangry stage, as I recall, and having done this before myself.
Yes, I'm pretty much past the hangry phase. The brain fog is lifting. it is a big fatigue day, and it's a big water day because autophagy is kind of peaked. So I'm flushing stuff out. But yeah, this is actually the worst day. It actually gets better from here. I did 200 days of fasting in 2022, 2023, and 38 days is my longest.
You did 200 days continuous? Is that what are you saying?
Not continuous. 200 days over a 2 year
I was going to say, all right, you went Gandhi mode there.
Oh no! 38 days is my longest continuous. Gandhi's is only 21, so he's kind of.
That's still, yeah, that's incredibly impressive. You probably recall the master cleanse was kind of popular in the early 2000s. I mean, it'd been around for decades before that, but it kind of got some resurgence in the early mid 2000s. And I did a 10-day fast at that point. And as I recall, about day 3 or 4, where you are now, is the toughest. And from that day forward was more of a mental game than anything else. The physical attribute and the biological need to eat subsided substantially. And from that point on, it was just a mental game for the rest of it. But hats off, man. That's awesome. 38 days is very impressive. Now, are you doing straight water? Are you doing any kind of like lemonade, maple syrup kind of concoction, cayenne pepper thing, or what are you doing?
No, absolutely no calories. The only thing that I do have is electrolytes and salt. So I use Dr. Berg's electrolytes, which is high in necessary potassium, and then salt is critical to this. I have done water only, and it wasn't worth it. Like I can do water only, but I will not be productive. So there's kind of there are different ways of going about doing this, but I fully intend to be, as I said from the first episode that I did in this series, I intend to do a year's worth of content in whatever duration this fast ends up being, because once you get in the zone, once you're operating on ketones and you're locked in, like it's amazing what you can get done.
Yeah, I can echo that. The mental clarity, the heightened sense of smell and taste. Especially was what was most prominent for me. Yeah, that's awesome. Keep going, man. I intermittent fast have been doing for about, I guess, close to 3 years now, doing the intermittent fasting thing. I really don't eat between 7 at night and 12 the next window during the and it works really well. Go ahead.
You broke the programming. That breakfast is the most important meal of the day. You managed to move yourself away from the psyop. That's commendable.
Yeah, well, being a cancer survivor, there's few things as motivating to get proactive with your health than dealing with a cancer diagnosis. And so when I was diagnosed in 2020 with squamous cell carcinoma, I went pretty deep down the rabbit hole on health, nutrition, diet, lifestyle, exercise, the whole nine. It's you were mentioning some of the psyop and bullshit around the food pyramid and USDA and FDA, which I wholeheartedly echo. The pyramid is absolutely upside down. And the question is it malicious or just out of pure ignorance? I would almost tend to I think it's the former, because of the big ag that is pushing for that carb-based food pyramid. But I don't know if you've I didn't hear. Go ahead.
I was going to say I actually went through that. It is malicious, and there's no doubt about it. Everything from the low-fat diet being popular was a psyop by this guy Ansel Keys, who is associated with the American Heart Association and tied to crony interest. All of it, the food pyramid. It's you can, and so what I wanted to do is not only lay out these things that are bullshit, but lay out who is behind it, and the fact that not only were they not held accountable, but they profited from it, and that continues, and that the new guidelines coming next are even worse. I mean, I had a disclaimer at the beginning. I said, don't listen to your doctors never studied fasting, and public health is a death cult. And I'm going to provide evidence of this because I don't say this willy-nilly. I've been studying this stuff for a long time. And then I had a healthcare company, and I was in that whole system with insurance and even dealing with people at the Harvard Public School of Health on ethics and everything else. And I studied public health for a while at Harvard, and it's all bullshit, and it's provable bullshit from inception. Like there's public health never had the intent of improving people's health. It had the intent of population control and eugenics.
Yeah, I tend to agree. My first exposure to this firsthand was when I was going through radiation to my head and neck. It was very excruciating toward the end of radiation to get anything down. I was determined to keep swallowing because so many people lose that ability during radiation to that area of the body. And my nutritionist, mind you, my MD licensed nutritionist that was part of my oncology team, the first thing she wants to do is push this boost shit on me. The second ingredient in it is corn syrup. We know that cancer needs sugar to survive and thrive, and this is what she's pushing on me to get down during a cancer treatment and diagnosis. I asked her point blank, I said, do you realize the ingredients in this crap that you're actually recommending to people? And you don't get much of a reply, you know, they just kind of nod their head and go along because that's what they're supposed to do. But that was my first spidey sense tingling moment where I thought, well, this is bass backwards completely. But I was curious. I didn't hear you mention it, and you may have, and I just missed it. But have you read Fiat Food by Matthew Lysiak?
I have. I think you recommended it to me, and I
okay.
And I did get it, and I read through it. I was familiar with most of it, but yeah, it's a good book. I mean, it does hit a lot of the high points, and so obviously. Yeah, these organizations are captured, and they have been since inception. Like this is the thing that I do harp on all the time. Like I hear RFK talking about, you know, returning to gold standard science. There was no gold standard science. This is this is a pipe dream. But it's a good book. And so
at least half of it, the second half, he turns into a Bitcoin maxi, but yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, can I ask, have either of you ever gone to NIH PubMed and searched ivermectin and cancer?
I have not.
I have. Yes, I've gone pretty deep down that rabbit hole while I was going through the journey myself. There's about, all things considered, I was out of commission for about 8 weeks, and my type of cancer does have a high cure rate. So if you're going to get cancer, you want to get the one that I had, but 0 out of 5 stars getting radiation to your throat. I do not recommend that by any means. But yes, to answer your question, ivermectin and fenbendazole, both of those two medications off-label, anecdotally, if nothing else, show quite a bit of promise. One of the first things I did when I was diagnosed was reached out to an integrative oncologist because I wanted somebody that was going to take more of a natural approach to my treatment plan. And that was the first person I reached out to. And the first thing he did was put me on high-dose ivermectin right out of the gate. So I took that for most of my, through all of my treatment scenario. And then I still will periodically dose it if I feel like I'm coming down with something. We did. This last winter was probably the worst winter in our household ever. And got 2 young kids in school, and they're walking petri dishes. So we just kind of got sick and spread it around the house for the better part of 2 months. But anecdotally, I was taking ivermectin during that time, and having had COVID in 2020, the sickest I have ever been in my life. This go around, I actually did test positive for COVID, but it was no more than about 24 hours of not feeling quite up to par. It passed pretty quickly. And again, I don't know if that was the ivermectin or just the fact that this virus has mutated to the point where fairly benign at this point. But yes, I think, thumbs up to that. I work with people that's, and so I'm always suggesting or recommending that they do some reading up on the link between ivermectin being and not only a combatant in a cancer diagnosis, but a good prophylactic as well.
Boy, I agree too. Ivermectin, from a parasitic, link to different forms of cancer seems to be probable. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I've heard the argument of cancer being a parasite, and I don't know enough as far as biology and chemistry to argue against that. I don't know that I fully buy that argument, but the fact that ivermectin does show promise in fighting it could lend some credibility to that posit. A great book that I found really helpful, if anybody out there is listening that is dealing with cancer or knows somebody who is, there's a great book by Travis Christofferson called Tripping Over the Truth, which is a fascinating read that I highly recommend if you're dealing with cancer, nobody who is. Goes into a lot of in-depth history of cancer and its treatment, the ugly side of it. Follow the money, of course, is always the rule of thumb in life in every aspect. And there's definitely a lot of ties there to big money and big pharma. I went up to Sloan Kettering, tip of the spear, while I was going through my journey. I went up there after surgery, prior to getting radiation, to have an oncology consultation. And I sat there in Sloan Kettering in New York in one of their clinics, tip of the spear for cancer research. And I watched literally the revolving door of people coming in and out of that place for treatment. And I said, well, this is very obvious, a massive multi-billion-dollar business. And they have zero incentive to actually cure cancer when they're making this much money off of it. On average, when you get diagnosed with cancer, you're looking at, you've got about a $600,000 price tag on your head, and everybody wants a piece of that pie. Everybody wants it. So you talk to the surgeon, they want to cut on you. You talk to the radiologist, they want to blast you with a magic light. You talk to the oncologist, they want to pump you full of poison in the form of chemotherapy. They all want a piece of that pie because they all want to be able to write that ICD-10 code and bill Medicare or your insurance for it and get paid. There is zero incentive from the traditional American Medical Association standard of care. There's zero incentive to cure cancer when it's such big business.
Yep. No, that is absolutely true. And they'll suppress. I think it was Sloan Kettering. I'm trying to remember now. I saw some documentary from some whistleblower that was in the PR department of Sloan Kettering or one of the other ones that actually then exposed. I wish I gotta find it. I gotta dig up what that was, because it was a fascinating story where one of the there was a treatment that actually worked, and one of the senior scientists had kind of validated it, and then he got pushed out, and they held a press conference, and it's just been a gigantic cover up. And then of course there's G. Edward Griffin's book, World Without Cancer. If you haven't read that, I recommend it. He's he pushes vitamin B17, but whether that's true or not, the book has a very fascinating history about big pharma and the ties to German companies and how all of that kind of pieced together historically. And so this is why literally, I mean, I avoid this and I avoid the medical system entirely, and then public health is very much malicious in intent. I mean, even down to the fact that it's like, okay, well, the sun's going to give us cancer because of the environment, so we're going to give you a carcinogen to put on for sunscreen. I mean, it's kind of like the COVID policy all over again. It's like they manufacture something and then give you a poison.
Of course.
So
they're both they're the arsonists and then try to claim to be the firefighters.
Yes, exactly. So So, again, we'll see how long this if I go the full distance with the fast, I'm going to be putting out a lot of content. And a lot of this stuff is stuff that I know and I've researched over years, but usually people see a meme from me and you might not think there's any context behind it, but people are going to get a fire hose of really interesting stuff. We'll see how. I won't be on YouTube for very long.
Bring it. Love it. Love to hear it, man.
Yeah.
There's a researcher, and I think the last name is Seymour, and he has been researching the link of how to starve cancer. And of course, glucose is one of them, but I think the other one is, I'm trying to remember, it's glycemine or anyway. And he, I don't know if any of you, does that sound familiar to any of you?
Yes, I'm familiar. I can't remember his first name either, but I know who you're talking about. He's written quite a few books on the topic.
Right.
And he's mentioned at length in that Travis Christofferson book, Tripping Over the Truth. Yes, I'm familiar. And that's the first thing I did when diagnosed is I immediately cut out sugar from my diet, refined sugar, and then very quickly moved on to removing carbohydrates, excessive carbohydrates. So I'm primarily carnivore at this point, kind of a ketovore, if you will. Not straight meat. I eat a lot of avocado too. I include kraut in almost every meal for the probiotics, just like Aaron was talking about earlier. But not a lot. My meals are absolutely protein heavy and dense, beef, chicken, fish, pork. I mean, I really don't discriminate on the meats, but mostly ground beef. It's just because it's easy to prepare. And then air fried steaks.
Right.
I can actually cook something. My wife's so proud of me now. I can actually cook yeah, cutting out. I mean, that's the thing. We can demonize modern medicine all we want, but at the end of the day, it's the individual that's shoving this crap in our mouths that's causing us to be sick, and you can't really blame anybody but yourself for so much of the maladaptive behaviors and symptoms that we're dealing with from eating poison for the better part of the last half century. It's insane, but I guess that you could claim ignorance on that, but.
Well, it's an uphill battle when you are going to health class in public school and they're putting the food pyramid down with 6 to 11 servings of carbs, and it's when public health is coming out telling you to eat 3 square meals, and then when you're getting bombarded with breakfast is the most important meal of the day, you actually have to realize that the whole system is bullshit and exit it before you can actually have good health. Because if you believe in any of these institutions we're supposed to believe in, that will make you sick, literally. That's the tough part.
Yeah, that's what they want. They want you fat, sick, and nearly dead.
Type 2 diabetes is a perfect example. They're making in 2022, it was $37,500 a year average profit for a healthcare professional taking care of a diabetes patient. You can cure type 2 diabetes with 2 tablespoons of chia seeds every day in water.
Yep.
It's simple as that. The number one blood pressure medication, still to this day with the least amount of side effects, garlic. Better than anything, but you can't patent it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
Glutamine. That's the other one. Glucose and glutamine.
Yeah. Yep. Glutamine. Yep.
And there was a recent paper that the gentleman Seymour had just published a couple of months ago, and I'm just still trying to find his first name. Thomas.
Yeah.
There you go. And he and people discount him because he's not a medical doctor. He's a researcher with a PhD, and it's been his life's pursuit for something like 40 years. But he's discounted just because he's not a medical doctor in the field. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and again, doctors should be discounted because doctors learn not 22 hours of nutrition and 0 about fasting. I would discount a medical doctor heavily.
Yes.
But I'll look into this guy because I'm seeing this right here as well. But this guy, Alan Goldhammer, I'm going to go through and I'll be analyzing more of his research. I mean, again, now doing a fast with AI is going to really level this up. But I think people are going to be shocked about what you can do with fasting. And again, it's a threat. It's a complete threat, because if the answer to this is to eat nothing, then that's problematic. Nobody gets a check for that. Not even Big Food.
No. Oh my goodness.
Imagine having Big Food and Big Pharma after you at the same time.
And the CIA.
There you go.
Turn everybody into breatharians.
Yeah, there you go. Well, isn't Jack Cruz big on light?
Oh, huge on light. I mean, that's it. That light's affect. You need your circadian rhythm in the morning. You get that red light, massive amount in the morning. The blue light in your screens is burning out your dopamine receptors. It's causing you to not metabolize your food correctly. It's greatly affecting your mood. Having any light at night when you're sleeping is greatly affecting your health. And of course, this was all apparently because he's a researcher too, big time. Mm-hmm. Bugsy Siegel, all the guys back in Vegas figured all this stuff out from the casinos, keeping people in the casinos. And then DARPA picked up on it, and they started doing the major studies on it to perfect the thing. And then DARPA gave the patents to Google. So Google actually owns all the blue light patents for your screen and everything. Now you can make, like a Kindle is a paper screen, they call. The more sunlight you get on it, the better you can see it. That's actually reflective light. And you're getting a lot more reds and we have those screens. We can do those screens. Mm-hmm. But the blue light keeps you on the screen. The blue light makes you heavy. The blue light causes your chronic diseases and everything else. And the blue light, your LED, incandescent lights, full of red light and full spectrum. These LEDs we got in our here that last for 11 and a half years, blue light. No, very little. And then sunscreen, you're right. And then everybody's wearing glasses. I bet you got UV coating on those glasses right there. Absolutely not. You need all that UV light into your eyes. One of the things he talks about, his father-in-law's old military, tough as nails guy, macular degeneration to the point that he was getting shots in his eyes. So the guy falls off a roof, breaks his arm, and Jack has him go do 4 treatments a day, 20 minutes of the red light, tells him to put on the black glasses. He doesn't do it. 6 months later, his macular degeneration is gone.
Wow.
Yeah, because he's getting massive amounts of the red light repairing his retinas, because that's part of your brain. Yeah. And it's adding, we're all electrical now. The heart's not really pumping. It's more of reacting to the
impulses.
Yeah, the electrical impulses in the swirl, why can't I say it? The whirlwind that comes to the
magnetic polar.
Yeah. Well, when you have vortex. But the light is adding massive amounts of electrons to your cells through your eyes. Absolutely. And it's what was that researcher? Oh, I read about this years ago, but she was finding 40 pulse lights. They were using rats and they were curing Alzheimer's. Oh, this is what they were doing. They were doing, they opened up their skulls and they were doing electrical impulses. And they figured out they could do it laser impulses right to the brain. And for 24 hours, the brain would clean out all the gunk, all the crap that causes Alzheimer's. And then she figured out that you could do it right through the eyes. All you had to do was do I think it's a 40 hertz. You can look it up. It's for an hour a day. You do the light, you do the sound, and it causes your brain to clean out for 24 hours. And so that back then, I find Jack 3 or 4 months ago, 5 months ago, and start really digging into his stuff. And he's got the goods, he's got the studies. I hate articles. I only read studies. I read an article to find out where they get the study from. It's like that pyramid crap underneath the pyramids that's going around. Yeah.
Was that LiDAR or whatever?
Yeah.
Some kind of radar?
No, it's not LiDAR. If it was LiDAR, I'd believe it.
Yeah.
And the tech might be there, but Yeah, I ain't holding my breath. Not once I've seen some serious physicists talk about it.
Have you ever looked at the Rife machine?
Oh, 100% correct. I had a alternative medicine guy, Chris Kaufman, when I used to live down in Sarasota 25 years ago, had a Rife machine. I've looked at the research of Rife stuff.
yeah.
Everything is resonance. Everything is down to. Have you ever looked at like a Mora machine or a Skio? In Germany, they're big on these. Are and they've been around for 20, 30 years or longer.
How do you spell that?
One of Mora, Mora or Morra. I think that was the German doctor's name, was Mora, and where it first came. And what he did, and they took thousands of patients, and they just measured the cell resonance, usually along acupuncture lines. And so healthy cells resonate one way, unhealthy cells resonate another way. And through thousands of people, they figured out, hey, I can go right now. And Chris now does this remotely with probes, because you can all computers. He would put me on his machine. He could run me through all the different resonance, find out exactly what was messing with me. He could treat me there or give me supplements or not necessarily supplements, homeopathics to take care of things. He did wonderful stuff for my wife, but you could read the resonance of the cell and know exactly what's going on. It's the best diagnostics machines I've ever seen in my life for peeling back the onion.
I've actually got a BioWell.
Is that one of those similar things?
It's one of the ones you put your fingertips in it and it measures the electrical current, and then it gives you like a diagram. It's an interesting device. I can't get it to work on because it's not USB C, and the connector thing makes it not function properly. But it was invented by this Russian guy. Uses gas discharge visualization technology, and it measures your energy field. So it's a pretty interesting device. And I got into I actually did some meditation retreats with Dr. Joe Dispenza. They actually have a thing that measures the energy of the room. They've been using it to measure. There is something to meditation, and I will talk about that as well. My wife and I went to a couple of meditation retreats of his, and again, it ties into frequency, and a lot of the meditative techniques are about heart-brain coherence. There is a scientific element to it, and he actually breaks it down pretty well. But it was interesting that the BioWell was how he was measuring some of this stuff, and they have some pretty phenomenal results at this point with the effectiveness of meditation, not only individually, but the ability to do group meditation and group healing. That's a whole fascinating area.
Oh, nice. Thanks.
Do any of you guys ever look at any stuff by Randall Carlson?
Yes.
Yeah, great. He had
he's amazing.
Oh yeah, amazing stuff. But he had a guy on it was only about a week ago, and this guy has got his PhD now. His old friend, but got his PhD, and he's working in an institute. I want to say it's in Arizona, all about meditation, and they're doing some really fascinating stuff with the different states, and learning how they function and affect our lives, how we function every day. And,
I did some of the Monroe Institute stuff. Yes. So I have the whole gateway 1 through 24 or whatever it is.
The hemisphere, the hemisync,
the hemisync, which I haven't got. I didn't spend as much time on that as I should, but I ended up spending more time on Thomas Campbell stuff. If you've ever heard of Thomas Campbell, he wrote a trilogy of books called My Big Toe, My Big Theory of Everything. But Thomas Campbell worked at the Monroe Institute. He was a physicist, and Bob Monroe basically brought him in the very early days. Bob Monroe basically had out-of-body experiences. He owned a radio station, but he didn't have a scientific background, and started having out-of-body experiences, and was kind of like, well, what is this all about? Can other people do this or whatever? And so brought in Tom Campbell, and they started figuring out how you could replicate these experiences, and started using binaural beats, where you put one frequency in one ear and a slightly different frequency in the other. And what that does is that your brain entrains to the difference between those two frequencies. And so you can get into the alpha wave state. When you're in the alpha wave state, that's when you can have a whole bunch of these meditative experiences. And so, but Tom Campbell does his own things individually. So yeah, I've gone down this whole rabbit hole. It's fascinating. In fact, if COVID hadn't happened, that's the kind of stuff I was spending all my time on, and I was going really deep into it. And it is quite a rabbit hole, by the way. I mean,
I bet.
Wow.
Yeah, I've got the HemiSync stuff too, and Sean Ryan did an interview with the guy was remote viewer number 1 in the and he talked all about the Monroe Institute. He works with the Monroe Institute too.
Right.
You've probably
I
seen
know who you're talking about.
Yeah, that guy's fascinating.
He was in Vietnam.
Yeah.
Yeah, fascinating.
Got poisoned.
Right. Oh, amazing. Amazing stories, amazing talent. There's something to that, you know.
Well, yeah. Have you guys ever looked at any Dr. Donald Hoffman stuff?
The name sounds familiar.
Yeah, he's the consciousness guy out in California, right?
Yeah, whatever reality is, it's not what we see. All we see is an adaptive fiction.
Yes. Yeah.
And fascinating, great stuff. And
that doesn't work politically.
No, it doesn't work politically, but
right.
Back last century, back in the 80s, someone handed me one of Castaneda's books, The Fire from Within. And I wound up reading all of them in multiple times. And in 40 years, every scientific breakthrough along those lines, to me, has done nothing but proven that world reality view. I don't know if you guys ever looked at it.
It's Tom Campbell. So he actually was probably the first one to talk about the idea that we live in a simulation.
Simulation, yeah.
And in fact, that is his whole. His books go into describing how it works. So when you're accessing what's kind of the Akashic record, what's referred to in other traditions, he's like, no, you're basically accessing the database. We're in a simulation, and you're accessing the database, and there are future probabilities, and you can change those probabilities, but basically we are in a simulated reality. And so a lot of his meditative techniques are about the fact that if something's a 1 in a billion probability, it isn't likely to happen. You may be able to skew some of these probabilities. We do still have free will, but we're working within a set where you're doing a random draw from a probability distribution when various things happen. And so now what he claims he can do is he can be in these states simultaneous. And interestingly, he was a physicist and a programmer. And so he first started, he took a transcendental meditation course or something in the workshop in the 70s, then realized, meditation is real. Then he hooked up with Bob Monroe, but he was at a point where he was working on like NASA simulations, and he was able to solve stuff nobody else could solve because he was able to get into the meditative state. So I can't do most of the stuff that he talks about. I've had some brief glimpses into some of it, but it's amazing what he's kind of put together. But what's the most amazing to me about him, Steve just said, did you just see him on Rogan? I just saw that he was on Rogan. I was shocked when I found this guy, 6 years ago, that like, why isn't this mainstream news? Why is this guy not mainstream? You know what I mean? Like, why isn't this like a popular thing? Why is it that it's always, it's Elon Musk and it's that other guy that talked about simulation theory? It's like Tom Campbell was talking about this 20 years ago. Like, why is this guy not in it? But anyway, it's fascinating.
Oh yeah, the Hawaiian.
Yeah, that. I actually just found that a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, this isn't what I thought was.
This guy did a big school paper analyzing all the Castaneda Don Juan teachings, and it's it's a really concise. I found it pretty. I'm only about a third of the way through it, but he's done a really good job of putting together the core ideas. If you guys ever want to take a look at that, other link is one of the Skio machines.
Cool. I just bookmarked it. Thanks.
I'm just bookmarking that right now as well. And the
Gentlemen, I'm going to have to sign off.
Yeah.
Hey, Aaron, tomorrow, if you are able to, would be 11 Eastern, World Blockchain Roundtable. The topic is blockchain meets Main Street with tokenized assets.
Oh yeah, I'll be on for that. I gotta we'll see. Unless I feel really weird,
Sure.
but yeah, no, I will plan on. That's right up my alley.
Yeah. Let me know if you need the link. I think you're still getting the links from.
Yeah, it's in my calendar. I'm getting all of it.
Super. Deadheaded,
Thanks, guys.
it
I'm
was
dropping
pleasure
out.
meeting you. It was pleasure meeting you, sir. It sounds like maybe we're kind of close to the same age. Remember the old movie Altered States?
Oh my God, yes.
I remember that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I remember. I'll tell you one better. There was
Yeah.
a club in Atlanta, right under the tunnel from Georgia Tech. That's where I went to school, called Club 688, and they had 6 televisions, large and small, and they just played Altered States 24/7.
Oh, how cool.
It was a punk club. So
Oh wow.
yeah, I'm 57, about to be 58. So
All
yeah.
right. Well, I just turned 62,
So yeah, we're not far off.
not far off at all.
Aaron, I'll
Aaron,
look for you
again,
next tomorrow night.
I appreciate everything you're doing, Aaron, and keep up this fast. And I support you, my friend.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you everybody for joining. This was all, I learned a whole bunch. I bet a lot of people are going to learn a lot of things today. I mean, I've got a whole bunch of things bookmarked. I've got, I've got some, books from Steve. This is and a bunch of resources here. So I appreciate it. I'm glad that people are participating in this. I hope people get value out of it. I know I do.
Oh, I do too.
Hey, Aaron, I'd love to spend an hour or so going over with you on asset use cases, because I got a ton of them.
Well, well, I will tell you what, next week, I'm going to make next week Zano focused, but one of the things that I'm talking about, and Sal the Agorist, who was on last night, I want to do one where we just start talking about and presenting different asset use cases. Because I think the public doesn't think abstractly about it. And I think that it would be a good idea to just get people excited about some concrete examples, and maybe that'll spur their creativity.
100%. I agree.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Have a good night.
Have a good night. Thanks so much.